Mirror disaster. Upon hearing these two words, Yilatang Bai's heart skipped a beat. As one of the former controllers of Pure Land, he was certainly familiar with it, but after Mirror disaster was hunted down at Chenlong Pass years ago, he actually didn't die? Yilatang Bai, I've long heard of your reputation, AI Mimi slowly began. 2 years ago when Mirror disaster used me as your replacement to restart the Artificial God project, I saw your files, drug experiments, potential extraction, life overdrafting. I realized then that we were the same kind of people. So that underground laboratory actually existed? Yilatang Bai frowned deeply. Then how did you escape? AI Mimi shook her head. I didn't escape. At the end of the experiment I killed him with my ability. He thought he could control me through drugs, making me obediently become his test subject, but he underestimated me. As for me, I would rather die in that laboratory than become his plaything again. He made me inject drugs, made me cooperate with experiments, and I did it all just to become stronger. Strong enough to kill him with one strike. 2 years I grew from a 14-year-old child to someone who looks over 20 now, and finally I got my chance. In the final experiment my mental power crossed the threshold and was about to enter the divine realm. I took advantage of his excited, ecstatic moment and directly manipulated his emotions to eliminate him. He died and I had no more drugs to extend my life, but I didn't care. I only knew I was free. Later, when I was about to die of illness in the basement, a little yellow person riding an electric scooter found me. When I woke up again I was already in this world. After hearing AI Mimi's words, Yilatang Bai stared blankly at the sky. If what AI Mimi said was true, then subsequently Lu Wei must have taken her to find Guanzai, who directly calculated her consciousness into data backup and uploaded it to this game. Strictly speaking, AI Mimi had already died, and this beautiful girl before him was merely game data that retained partial memories and settings. But why would Guanzai present this data to him at this moment? Why tell me all this? Yilatang Bai asked. AI Mimi took a deep breath and spoke deliberately, because you are just too pathetic. Yilatang Bai stood frozen. You clearly possess the power to alter this world's rules. Yet you don't use it at all. You're the first-generation artificial god. Your ability ceiling is higher than mine. The other two players were weakened by Guanzai, but in this game you were always meant to be the protagonist. If you wanted to, you could have used your own rules to change the rules of this world, yet you still tried to kill me with that puny gun. Do you know why Guanzai designed such powerful skills for me and such unfavorable game requirements for you? It's because he wanted to force you to abandon your gaming mindset and use your true power. A god of games should create rules. Subvert rules. A player who only obediently follows rules designed by others can never become a god of games. AI Mimi's angry voice echoed throughout the venue. Yilatang Bai lowered his head among the crowd, silent for a long time, with a hint of resignation appearing in his eyes. He slowly stood up from the crowd, removed his disguising hat, and his waterfall-like white hair scattered with his steps, immediately attracting the attention of AI Mimi and others on stage. AI Mimi's gaze fell on him as if realizing something. She immediately shifted her gaze away. Strangely, Yilatang Bai wasn't instantly killed by that momentary stare. His figure flickered and he passed through the crowd onto the stage. So, you came to help me become a god? Yilatang Bai looked directly into her eyes. Why aren't you dead? AI Mimi frowned and asked. Skill 1's condition is to eliminate hostile targets. Right now, I don't consider myself your enemy, Yilatang Bai said softly. Actually, you were wrong about one thing earlier. Uncle Guan didn't design these rules just to force out my potential. He's a game designer, and for him he would never design a completely unsolvable game. Actually, killing you isn't difficult. The answer is hidden in the question itself. Yilatang Bai pointed to the audience below, the entire crowd bewildered and stunned. At some point the entire concert venue had fallen completely silent. From the beginning, the game background stated that our goal here was to crack down on lip-syncing. This wasn't a joke because all your abilities are based on the fanatical emotions of your fans. If their fanaticism subsides, your power would be greatly reduced. My conversation with you just now wasn't just to buy time, it was also to let them see your true face. Actually, when you killed Brother Qingzhu and Brother Chia, your emotions had already started to lose control, hadn't they? You unconsciously abandoned your sweet and cute facade because you never expected them to cause you so much trouble under such overwhelming rules. As an idol, losing emotional control means the collapse of your public image. Combined with what you just said, their fanaticism toward you has already begun to fade. Haven't you noticed that you've already exited the berserk state? Hearing the last sentence, AI Mimi was stunned. She looked up at the space above her, and the berserk status indicator had dimmed. All her stats had returned to normal, and her health was down to less than 200 points. At this point, if Yilatang Bai fired his gun once more, she would certainly die. But Yilatang Bai didn't do that. The silver-white gun in his hand faded into the air. He stood firmly at the center of the stage, looking at AI Mimi before him, and spoke word by word. Do you want to leave? What? Leave the virtual game world and return to the real world. Hearing this, AI Mimi's first reaction was to shake her head. How is that possible? This body is just a pre-programmed data sequence. Without the code, I am nothing. Didn't you say it yourself? A god of games should create rules, subvert rules. You, AI Mimi was stunned, then seemed to realize something. You've comprehended the game's laws? There are no game laws in the world. But perhaps I can create them myself. Though the debugging process might be very complex and I don't have much confidence. Yilatang Bai looked up at the void and smiled slightly. Anyway, thank you, Uncle Guan. As his words fell, streams of silver-white ribbons floated out from his body. Looking carefully, one would discover they weren't ribbons but game settings like a tide, densely stacked together, enveloping Yilatang Bai's form like waves. At the same time, AI Mimi's figure also brightened, and a prompt floated above her head. Skill 7. Divine Cocoon Rule Editor. When player Yilatang Bai enters the rule creation state, all of AI Mimi's computing power will be dedicated to assisting in correcting and testing the birth of rules until the final trial run is complete. Seeing this prompt, AI Mimi's expression became incredibly complex. You'd better keep your word. She looked at the white-haired youth enveloped in game settings, and after a long while she sighed, her form slowly approaching him. When her lips touched Yilatang Bai's cheek, her form instantly transformed into countless lines of code, mixing into the game settings. The next moment, the pulsating game settings completely enveloped Yilatang Bai's body, like a huge cocoon protecting him within. The virtual game scene shattered piece by piece. Night Watcher Headquarters. Conference room. It's been 3 days since the Gold Coast attack. The public opinion situation is very unfavorable now. PR Department Director Zhong Xianji began gravely. Thousands of people missing, a disaster of this scale cannot be suppressed. The relatives of the missing have reported to the police one after another, causing quite a stir. Although we've claimed it was a tsunami, other areas in the same waters that day were completely calm. Only a 2 to 3 kilometer stretch of coastline experienced a tsunami that somehow swept away so many people at once. It simply doesn't make sense. Public opinion is now trending toward conspiracy theories. Although we've been constantly controlling comments online, the victims' families have gathered independently, marching and protesting, demanding that officials immediately organize teams to search the sea and give them answers. The local Night Watcher team has also reported that many civilian organizations have crossed the Gold Coast blockade line to conduct their own investigations, though they haven't found anything. Chen Han nodded and said. Logistics Department Director Yu Julin immediately added, "We've already dealt with all traces of Poseidon in advance, so they definitely won't find anything. What I mean is, they're taking this matter very seriously." Destiny Monk sat at the center of the conference table, his brows slightly lowered, calmly listening to the statements of the other 7 executives. After everyone else had finished speaking, Destiny Monk slowly opened his mouth. Continue to suppress the social impact of this incident. Destiny Monk was a man of few words. After saying this, he showed no intention of speaking further. The executives exchanged glances, all seeing the helplessness in each other's eyes. Are we really not taking any measures against Olympus? Chin Han couldn't help but ask. We will, but not now. But those ordinary people are in Olympus, who knows what might happen. If we move 1 day earlier to rescue them, we might avoid more casualties. I agree with Chen Han's view, Xiaopinga nodded and said, Great Xia is no longer the Great Xia of the past, and Olympus is not the Olympus of yesteryear. In terms of combat power, we're not inferior to them. We should rescue those ordinary people sooner to avoid complications. I said now is not the time. Destiny Monk stood up, his gaze calmly sweeping across everyone. If there's nothing else, let's adjourn. He picked up the documents on the table and was about to walk out, leaving the 7 executives looking at each other in bewilderment. Creak. Just then the conference room door was pushed open, and a deep red figure stood in the doorway. Commander Lin? Chin Han's eyes lit up at the sight. Destiny Monk looked at Lin Chia standing outside the door and said flatly, "Is it over? Did Yu Liliang Bai succeed?" "He hasn't finished yet. I received Min Juanliang's call and came over immediately." Lin Chia glanced at everyone in the conference room and said to Destiny Monk, "Let's talk in the office." The two returned to the office. Lin Chia closed the door and immediately spoke. "Why aren't we rescuing them? The risk is too great." Destiny Monk didn't beat around the bush and spoke frankly. "Although our combat strength is not inferior to Olympus now, they are in the mist after all, and it's their home turf." Lin Chia pondered. "You want to follow the original plan, wait for teacher to come out of seclusion and then attack Olympus? Waiting for Zhou Ping to achieve the supreme state gives Great Xia an extra layer of insurance, which is naturally the safest approach. But it will be 3 more days before he comes out of seclusion," Lin Chia said gravely. 3 days is too long for ordinary people. Can they really hold out in Olympus until we get there?" Destiny Monk looked at him for a moment. "So? Are you planning to risk all of Great Xia's top fighters for these few thousand people? Sacrificing ordinary citizens to protect our strength is not the original intention of the Night Watchers." Lin Chia spoke resolutely. "When Great Xia only had 5 human powerhouses years ago and faced an invasion of outer gods, didn't they still charge to the front lines at the risk of their lives? Did they ever worry about their own survival? Today's Great Xia is several times stronger than before, yet now you want us to protect our strength while watching ordinary citizens being tortured to death by outer gods? If that's the case, what have we been desperately trying to become stronger for?" Destiny Monk was not moved by Lin Chia's words at all and coldly replied, "Precisely because this strength was hard-won, we must preserve our current fighting power. Our enemies are not just Olympus." The two stood in the office staring at each other, deadlocked for the moment. After some time, Lin Chia took out an emblem from his pocket, placed it on the desk and said solemnly, "If dark night finally comes, I shall stand before tens of thousands, sword drawn against the abyss, blood staining the sky. If I, Lin Chia, cannot fulfill the content of this oath, then I am not worthy to be commander-in-chief." With these words, Lin Chia placed one hand on the straight sword at his waist and turned to walk out of the office. Destiny Monk watched the departing deep red figure, his brows slightly furrowed. "Wait," he suddenly said. Lin Chia paused. "Are you determined to go?" "Yes." Lin Chia replied without hesitation, "If anything happens, I alone will bear the consequences." Destiny Monk's expression became somewhat complex. After a moment of silence he finally spoke. "I'm sorry." Lin Chia frowned and turned back puzzled. "Why are you apologizing?" "I lied to you all." Destiny Monk slowly said, "I told those Nightwatcher executives that the ordinary citizens were still alive to stabilize morale. In fact, by last night of those 6,400 people, only a little over 200 remained alive. Those remaining won't survive more than an hour. Even if you rush to Olympus now, you simply can't save them." Hearing these words, Lin Chia felt as if lightning had flashed through his mind, leaving him frozen in place. "If you don't believe me, see for yourself." Destiny Monk handed the list from his desk to Lin Chia. On that densely packed list of victims, strands of cause and effect extended into the distant void. Following those causal threads, there was no trace of life at the other end, with only a meager 200 people remaining, their life forces as faint as candlelight. Destiny Monk looked at Lin Chia's grim face and said word by word, "Now, do you still want to risk the lives of the living for these corpses?" Lin Chia's gaze swept over the list of causes and effects, his hand gripping the paper tighter and tighter. In this world only 2 people could see cause and effect. One was the Monk of Destiny and the other was him. Causeless cause and predetermined effect were of the same level. Even the Monk of Destiny couldn't deceive his eyes. The victims represented by these names were indeed dead, and the remaining 200 people were on the verge of death, absolutely unable to hold on until they reached Olympus. So, their purpose from the beginning was to kill ordinary people out of spite? A fierce anger burned in Lin Chia's eyes. These beasts. As murderous intent raged wildly, the monk of destiny was about to say something when Lin Chia shouted angrily at the void beside him. Shut up. The monk of destiny was stunned. Without another word, Lin Chia first sank his consciousness into the god's mental hospital, killed the constantly chattering cuss, and then returned to reality, his face so gloomy it could drip water. The monk of destiny realized that the previous words weren't directed at him, so he asked, "What do you plan to do?" The anger on Lin Chia's face gradually subsided, quickly returning to his usual calmness, though in his eyes, one could vaguely see flashes of cold light. Lin Chia's first purpose in attacking Olympus was to save people. But now that the people were dead, only endless hatred remained between them and Olympus. Since it was about revenge without overwhelming advantage, charging into Olympus would be an absolute risk, all harm and no benefit. He pondered for a moment, then spoke grimly. Then we'll wait 3 more days. After 3 days we'll bathe Olympus in blood. Seeing this, the monk of destiny finally relaxed somewhat. He nodded slightly. Since you're back, I'll leave this work to you. I'll come find you again in 3 days. The monk of destiny walked out of the office, closed the door and slowly walked toward the end of the corridor. The dusky sunset fell on his muddy kasaya, his shadow walking between light and darkness. His slender fingertips reached into his robe, slowly pulling out another list. He glanced at this list, lightly flicked it, and it turned into scattered fragments, disappearing with the breeze. Don't blame me. Everything is for the final victory. Olympus. Under the low, dark clouds, a massive tree hung like the sword of Damocles governing fate above the head of every Greek deity. Hades, the king of the underworld wearing a black robe, walked into a dark palace. Crimson bloodstains splattered the floor tiles, already congealed into scabs. In the deepest part of the palace, a blood-covered figure was suspended on an iron frame, head hanging low as if dead. How is it going? Hades' voice sounded low. Still hasn't said anything, a vicious figure in armor holding a whip covered in thorns respectfully replied. Seems like a tough one. Hades chuckled, walked up to the figure and lifted her chin with one hand. Xia Ximing's eyes were covered with blood, her eyelashes stuck together. Through the bloody gaps, she looked at the man before her, the corners of her pale lips curving slightly upward. Hee, if it isn't the famous Hades, you actually have time to visit me. Why didn't you bring a gift? Gift? What gift would you like? Perhaps the teeth you lost when you invaded Xia? Ha ha. Xia Ximing's arrogant laughter echoed throughout the palace. Hades' gaze instantly turned cold. His slender fingers gripped Xia Ximing's throat, silencing her laughter. A chilling energy seeped from his fingertips into Xia Ximing's body, turning her neck purple. I don't want to waste words with you. Since you're Athena's proxy, has she contacted you in the past few years? Where did she go with Nyx? Hades' voice was ice cold. Xia Ximing's pupils gradually dilated. She opened her mouth and hoarsely said, No. Hades frowned and asked again, Since you're Athena's proxy, your position in Xia's night watchers must not be low. I ask you, what moves is Xia making recently? Besides those human deities, what other trump cards do you have? Xia Ximing's face was like death ash. She seemed to finally succumb to the king of the underworld's divine power, mumbling something inaudible. Hades released his grip and moved closer to Xia Ximing. What did you say? Said Xia recently wants to. Hearing these vague words, Hades' eyes lit up slightly. Wants to give me vacation. 10 days. No, 20 days. Hades froze, then after a moment came to his senses and stared at Xia Ximing. You're mocking me? Xia Ximing burst into laughter, showing no sign of her previous near-death state. Her eyes were full of mockery. Rage burned in Hades' eyes. He snatched the whip from the guard beside him and frantically lashed it against Xia Ximing's body. The frost-emitting thorns cut open her flesh, and fresh blood splattered throughout the palace. But Xia Ximing just clenched her teeth, like a tense corpse, seemingly unaware of pain. After a full half-minute of whipping, when Xia Ximing's breath had nearly vanished, Hades finally stopped. His heaving chest gradually calmed and he coldly glanced at her. Throw her back in the cage, don't let her die. Drag her out for another beating tomorrow. With those words, Hades' form turned into a shadow and disappeared from the palace. Following instructions, the guard untied the dying Xia Siming from the iron frame. With a thud, she collapsed to the ground like mud. He grabbed her hair with one hand and dragged her like garbage to a huge cage. This cage had a very strange design. From a distance, it looked like a bird cage made of gold, elegant yet sturdy, even keeping the hazy gray mist outside, as if it were the dwelling of some divine bird. But now this golden bird cage was packed with humans. These humans were disheveled and filthy, huddled together in various parts of the cage, roughly 1,000 people at a glance. At the edge of the cage, several injured young women were silently watching the direction of the palace. As the guard dragged Xia Siming from the pool of blood, their pupils suddenly contracted. They instinctively wanted to stand up but restrained themselves, pretending to huddle in place as if nothing had happened. Creak. The guard opened the cage door, casually threw Xia Siming inside, disgustedly wiped the blood from his hands, closed the door and walked away. After confirming he was gone, the young women rushed forward and picked up the blood-covered Xia Siming. "Captain. Are you all right, Captain?" Cough, 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 cough. A weak coughing sound came from Xia Siming's throat. Her pale lips curved into a difficult smile. "It's nothing. I'm the captain of the Phoenix team." "Phoenix, how could I die so easily? Even with the strongest Phoenix bloodline, you can't withstand their daily torture." A young girl with reddened eyes carefully examined Xia Siming's wounds, growing more alarmed the more she looked. "Oh, it's nothing. After I rest for an hour, I'll be up and about again. These beasts. I'll fight them to the death." Another burly girl suddenly stood up and was about to charge at the birdcage door. Just then a hand pressed on her shoulder. "Lingling, calm down." Vice Captain Chao Sha's eyes were bloodshot, but he still spoke calmly. "This door cannot be opened by anyone below the divine realm. If you make too much noise now, not only will you die but those ordinary people will suffer because of you." Lingling clenched her fists, her chest heaving violently, but eventually she leaned against the bird cage and sat on the ground, looking dejected. "Chao Sha is right. At first you blended in with the ordinary people and weren't discovered by them. Now in their eyes I'm the only night watcher. If you all are exposed to their torture will target our entire team. The Phoenix bloodline in your bodies is thinner than mine. You won't survive their torture. No matter what you see or hear, you absolutely cannot expose yourselves." Xia Siming's tone was unprecedentedly serious. The members of the Phoenix team remained silent. After a long while, Xia Siming's injuries recovered somewhat. The Phoenix bloodline gave her terrifying blood production and regeneration abilities. Although not as abnormal as in Qingyu's blood rebirth, she could still repair non-fatal injuries. She forced herself to sit up from the pool of blood and looked at Chao Sha beside her. "How are the others doing?" Chao Sha opened his mouth then said, "Over 600 people died today, more than yesterday and the day before combined. Most of the dead were elderly. Some died from panic and external stimuli causing their underlying conditions to worsen. Some starved to death. Although this bird cage is near a stream, barely allowing them to drink water, they can't survive 3 days without food. If this continues, more and more people will starve to death." Xia Siming frowned deeply and spoke angrily. "These Greek gods lock them up here, couldn't they at least give them something to eat? Their purpose is only to use us as leverage and cannon fodder in the final battle. They don't care about the lives of cannon fodder. They only need some of us to be alive when the final battle comes. At this rate, young adults might be able to hold on for 2 more days, but the elderly and children definitely won't make it." Xia Siming's gaze swept across the bird cage, looking at those pitiful figures curled up in hunger, her lips pressed together. The yellowish daylight gradually dimmed, and darkness enveloped the bird cage. Under the faint starlight, moans occasionally came from the crowd, but most people huddled in various corners of the bird cage, fighting the mountain cold with what little body heat they had left, making no sound like numb corpses. In a corner of the bird cage, a young girl was holding the cold corpse of an infant in her arms. Her body trembled constantly as she made suppressed sobbing sounds. She dared not cry too loudly, partly worried about disturbing others, and partly afraid that loud crying would attract those vicious guards. In the past few days she had witnessed many people who shouted loudly being torn to pieces alive by them. As she cried, her vision began to darken, and she instinctively fell backward while holding her brother's corpse. At that moment, A hand steadily supported her body. The girl came to her senses and was about to see clearly what was happening when another hand covered her eyes. "Who is it?" the girl asked somewhat nervously, but she was too weak to break free. "Don't be afraid, open your mouth." A gentle male voice came from beside her. The girl was stunned and was about to say something when she felt something dripping onto her lips. She instinctively licked it, and a salty taste with an iron rust flavor slid down her throat. After several drops, the girl suddenly felt she wasn't hungry anymore. Her cold body gradually regained warmth, and her exhausted body regained a bit of strength. A moment later, the hand covering her eyes released and a man made a shoot gesture to her. Because it was too dark, she couldn't see his face clearly. The girl looked at all this in confusion. Then the man took advantage of the night, slowly walked through the sleeping crowd and came to a 7 or 8-year-old boy. He similarly covered the boy's eyes and whispered something. Vaguely, the girl saw him raise his blood-colored palm to the boy's lips, and drops of fresh blood flowed from the hideous wound on his palm into the boy's mouth. The man's figure moved continuously through the crowd, feeding his fresh blood to younger children. Every few minutes, as the wound on his palm was about to heal, he would take out a small knife and cut the wound again, ensuring blood continued to flow. An hour later, his face was extremely pale. After feeding the 200th child, he walked with staggering steps back to the edge of the birdcage door, carefully sat down holding the railing, afraid of disturbing those nearby. "Chow Sha." A voice suddenly sounded beside the man. Chow Sha, who had just sat down, pupils slightly contracted, turned his head sharply to look. He saw Xia Siming leaning against the birdcage, looking at him weakly, her expression extremely complex. "Captain." Chow Sha opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. Xia Siming stared at him and slowly said, "When did you start feeding them?" "Today is the first day." Chow Sha looked toward the dark birdcage and spoke bitterly. "Captain, if this continues, these children won't last until the end. The phoenix bloodline contains endless energy. Just a few drops can help them relieve hunger for a day. So I thought." "Fool." Xia Siming grabbed his neck with one hand, anger appearing on her pale face. "Just because you have some phoenix bloodline you think you're a real phoenix. Don't forget this bloodline was artificially introduced into your bodies. Do you think you produce phoenix blood quickly? Do you think bloodletting has no consequences? The phoenix blood you're letting out now is your own life." Xia Siming had already lowered her voice to the extreme. Under her bloodshot eyes' angry gaze, Chow Sha just lowered his head and remained silent. After an unknown amount of time, Chow Sha finally spoke hoarsely. "I know. But Captain, I couldn't just watch them starve to death. They're human beings too, they did nothing wrong. They're just like us, wanting to quietly enjoy their vacation by the sea. Those children, they truly don't understand anything. Phoenix blood can save these children's lives. What does it matter if I risk my life?" Xia Siming's brows furrowed tightly. "Even if you wanted to do this, why didn't you tell me? What am I as your captain in your eyes?" Chow Sha smiled helplessly. "Captain, don't I know you well enough? If I had told you, would I have been the one to give blood? No matter what, I, Chow Sha, am the only man in the Phoenix team. At times like this, of course I should step forward, just like Senior Kong Shang did back then." Upon hearing Kong Shang's name, Xia Siming's pupils contracted slightly. "You men, where does this sense of duty come from? What, you think we women should hide behind you men?" Xia Siming pinched Chow Sha's shoulder hard, making him wince in pain. Having vented her anger, Xia Siming sat up straight again. Her gaze swept across the ground around them, and she picked up a broken plastic bucket used for building sandcastles from somewhere. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing an arm covered in hideous scars, and forcefully slashed her fingertip across her wrist. Crimson blood immediately gushed out. "Captain, what are you shouting for?" Xia Siming glanced at him. "I'm the captain of the Phoenix team and the proxy of the war goddess Athena. In terms of blood regeneration ability and Phoenix blood concentration, I'm 100 times better than you. It takes you several drops of blood to save one person, but I can save someone with just one drop. You struggled to feed 200 children. I can save 10 times that number in one go." Chow Sha stared blankly at the fresh blood flowing into the bucket, taking a moment to come back to his senses. No. Captain, your wounds from today haven't healed yet. If you give blood now, what will you do tomorrow?" "Don't worry, I'm tough. This little bit of blood is nothing. Xia Siming patted her chest and held her head high. Don't you know what indestructible means? As the blood flowed out, Xia Siming's already pale face grew increasingly ashen. Chao Sha immediately stopped her bleeding, repeatedly saying, Enough. Enough, Captain. You can't give any more. It's fine, just a bit more. No more. Tisk, are you disrespecting me? Captain, this isn't pouring wine. Chao Sha firmly pressed down Xia Siming's hand and picked up the plastic bucket full of blood, his expression extremely serious. With an ashen face, Xia Siming smiled and withdrew her hand, nodding at him. All right, go distribute it to them. Children first, then the elderly, then everyone else. Don't worry, Captain, you just rest well. Watching Chao Sha's gradually receding figure, the smile on Xia Siming's face slowly faded. She looked at the golden character too flickering above her head and murmured, Only 2 days left. You must come. As she finished speaking, her head drooped weakly as if she had fallen asleep. The night passed. As daylight rose from the sea, the golden bird cage was opened from the outside. Several armored guards picked up the drowsy Xia Siming from the edge and carried her deep into the palace. After some time, Xia Siming's faint laughter could be heard from within, followed by increasingly violent whipping sounds. Great Xia. Lin Chia, sitting behind his desk, suddenly stopped writing and looked up at the rainy window outside. He frowned. Strange. Why do I feel so uneasy? Lin Chia slowly stood up, paced around the office for a moment, then picked up the phone and dialed a number. A few minutes later, Min Junliang walked in quickly. What is it, Commander? Any news from Master? No, but the sword intent around Jianlu has grown stronger. Our people can't even get close. By the looks of it, he'll emerge in the next couple of days. Lin Chia nodded slightly. Clear out those spies at the border. Notify all human powerhouses and human deities that they can start converging at the marked sea area. Min Junliang was stunned. Commander, are we moving so early? It's not early at all. Takes time to travel from Great Xia to Olympus. It's better to set up an ambush near Olympus in advance just in case. Min Junliang nodded. All right, I'll notify them right away. As Min Junliang left, Lin Chia also walked out, heading directly to Yulilang Bai's hospital room. Outside the hospital room, Shin Qingzhu was smoking by the window. Seeing Lin Chia hurrying over, he raised his eyebrows. What? Are we leaving? Yes, I have a bad feeling. Lin Chia glanced at the hospital room. How is Lang Bai? Guan just went in a few minutes ago. I'm not sure how things are going. Lin Chia nodded, knocked lightly on the hospital room door and then pushed it open. Cold wind rushed in from the open window, making the white curtains on both sides dance. The previously floating code sphere had disappeared. In the empty hospital room, only a figure wearing a baseball cap stood with his back to them, silent. Beep. A harsh buzz came from the vital signs monitor. Yulilang Bai lay on the pale bed with his eyes closed, showing no signs of life. Lin Chia's heart sank. Lang Bai. Lin Chia walked to the bedside and grabbed Yulilang Bai's wrist. The cold touch made his eyes contract slightly. Guan turned around and calmly said, Don't call him. He won't wake up. The doctor declared him dead half an hour ago. Dead? Lin Chia and Shin Qingzhu stared at the white-haired youth's body on the bed, their eyes filled with disbelief. For them, they had just played a game with Yulilang Bai not long ago and now he was dead? Why is this happening? Did he fail to become a god? Don't panic, don't panic. Seeing the expressions of Lin Chia and Shin Qingzhu, Guan spoke helplessly. His body was inherently deficient, so of course it couldn't withstand the process. Besides, if he were to become a god, it wouldn't happen in this body anyway. From Guan's tone, he didn't seem particularly sad. Lin Chia asked in confusion. So did he succeed or fail? Guan smiled slightly, his haggard face showing a long-absent pride. He took out a game cartridge with a blank label from his pocket and placed it in Lin Chia's hand. He succeeded. Special Secret Department. The large raindrops hit the window, making a dull sound. In the dim conference room, 9 figures were sitting around a round table. Except for Wu Quan in the center and a red-haired girl, the other 8 figures all looked strange and bizarre. There was a shadow with a red eye, a small pale spider boy, a burly and fierce white bear, and even a spinning silver magic cube. In addition, I have already resolved the mysterious riot incident in Suzhou City with my team. However, the local night watchman team still seems to be very wary of our presence. Black Pupil said unhurriedly. They're more than just wary. The star blade almost chopped my head off, the void white bear snorted, causing the entire desk to shake violently. Woof. Wang Kai expressed agreement. Wu Quan nodded slightly. I will communicate this to the night watchman team in Suzhou. Thank you all for your assistance. After all, it's a task assigned by the director, so helping out is only natural. No need for thanks, Azu said seriously. By the way, is there going to be a war soon? Black Pupil stared at Wu Quan curiously. Yes. Wu Quan didn't conceal anything. We're about to go to war with Olympus, probably in the next few days. Does that mean we'll be going to the battlefield too? What are you thinking? This is a war between gods and we're just mysteries. The most combat-capable among us is probably Lai Fu. Does it look like it wants to participate in the war? The blue cat lying at the edge of the desk lazily yawned. That's true, but the white bear should be able to go to the battlefield, right? He probably can. After all, he is the director's sword. One of them. The void white bear glared at Black Pupil. What do you mean one of them? Even if the director has many weapons, I am his favorite sword. The one and only. Is that so? But he hasn't taken you to battle for several years. That's because that harbinger of doom stole his body so he couldn't summon me. Besides, since the boss became the commander-in-chief, he hasn't fought much, has he? The void white bear stared with wide eyes, arguing forcefully, seeming like he was about to fight with Black Pupil at any moment. Black Pupil smiled helplessly and was about to say something when a brilliant magical light suddenly lit up from beneath the void white bear's feet. Seeing this familiar glow, the void white bear immediately became excited. What did I tell you? The director is summoning me. But before he could finish speaking, the same summoning array also opened beneath the feet of the other caretakers. Everyone present, except for the two mysteries under Wu Quan's control, was enveloped in the light of the magic array. Seeing this, Red Face narrowed her eyes. The director is summoning us. When we walk in the outside world, it consumes a large amount of divine power from the Seraph Avatar. Now that the director is calling us all back, it means he's getting serious this time. Black Pupil licked his lips. It's been a long time since we've seen the director go all out. As the caretakers disappeared one by one, the magical light in the room finally dissipated, and the conference room once again fell into darkness. Wu Quan calmly stood up from his chair, waved away the two controlled mysteries, walked to the window, and through the rainwater streaming down the glass, could see a storm brewing between the clouds. Ding dong. Wu Quan looked down at the message on his phone and showed an expression of, just as expected. It's finally beginning. Wu Quan's eyes lit up. With a flick of his finger, the window automatically popped open, and the next moment he transformed into a shadow and flew out, breaking through the rain curtain and disappearing under the storm. Meanwhile, space. The six-winged figure floating above Earth slowly opened its eyes. Brilliant magical lights flashed through its pupils, and over 100 summoning spells were instantly released. All the caretakers active on Earth were simultaneously sent back to the Seven Knights Divine Mental Hospital within the main body. Except for one snow-white long sword. With a flick of the six-winged angel's finger, this snow-white long sword rapidly fell toward a certain location on Earth. After watching the sword depart, a majestic and terrifying light ignited in his eyes. The dormant divine power surged again and golden ripples spread through deep space. Under the infusion of divine power, the vast magical array lit up above a certain part of Earth's atmosphere. The complex magical patterns intertwined with each other, making one's eyes dizzy just by looking at them. In the dead silence of space, ancient forbidden spell arrays were gradually taking shape. Great Xia border mist. The countdown above Olympus should have less than 2 days left, right? Why haven't these Great Xia people shown any movement yet? Beneath the surging sea surface, a demigod from Olympus asked with confusion. You just said there are still 2 days left, why would they move so early? Another demigod replied leisurely, don't worry, since they issued a declaration of war in that manner, they will definitely take action. We don't need to worry about when Great Xia will make their move. We just need to follow Lord Poseidon's instructions and keep an eye on them, a third demigod said seriously. This is the necessary route from Great Xia to Olympus. As long as they move, we will definitely detect it. Remember, don't engage them directly in battle. Delivering the message to Olympus is the most important thing. Lord Poseidon? What is he? Just a main god who grabbed a golden throne. Does he really think he's the lord of Greek mythology? Watch your words. Why should I? What's that sound? Sound? What sound? Don't you hear it? Sounds like some kind of musical instrument. It's coming from within Great Xia's territory. It's probably just the wind. The three demigods listened carefully for a long time and indeed heard some kind of melodious sound from the other side of the mist, and the sound seemed to be getting closer to them. This is bad. It must be people from Great Xia. One demigod's expression changed. Send the signal first. All right. One of the demigods immediately raised his hand, and just as he was about to mobilize his divine power, a palm suddenly burst through his heart. He turned back in astonishment to see that another demigod who had been standing beside him now had a ferocious expression, staring at him intently while laughing. Haha, Great Xia God. Die. His palm pulled forcefully, directly tearing his companion's body to pieces. The next moment, a cold flash cut through his throat. The third demigod also had a ferocious expression. Poseidon, if I kill you, I can become the Lord of Olympus. Ha ha. Among the surging waves, the three demigods fought madly against each other. After a short few dozen seconds, 3 broken divine corpses floated up from the seabed, and crimson blood stained the sea surface. Above the sea area dyed red with divine blood, the silhouettes of several exploration ships gradually emerged from the mist. At the bow of one of the exploration ships, Hu Jia, wearing a black cloak, put down his stone sun and glanced indifferently at the 3 divine corpses. The trailing lesser gods have been dealt with. On the central exploration ship, a deep red figure responded with a hum. The next moment, as if sensing something, he looked up at the sky. A meteor streaked across the horizon, falling precisely toward his position. Lin Chia narrowed his eyes slightly. Without moving from his spot at the bow, he slowly extended his palm toward the meteor, plummeting straight down. Boom! The meteor crashed into the bow but was firmly gripped by that pair of hands. The terrifying kinetic energy was mostly dispersed by that arm, while the remaining force transmitted to the exploration ship below, causing the nearby sea surface to surge several meters high. Fine white spray scattered in the storm as a snow-white longsword was now gripped in his palm. Looking at this familiar blade, Lin Chia's lips curved slightly upward. Long time no see, old friend. Zhan Bai emitted a sharp hum as if responding to Lin Chia's call, incredibly excited. Lin Chia placed it at his waist, hanging it crossed with another black and gold long sword. That was the supreme Magutsui blade, Shinwa, left behind by Yuzuri Tekashiro. One snow-white, one black and gold, emanating a chilling gleam beneath the wildly dancing deep red cloak. Lin Chia raised his eyes, looking toward a certain direction in the mist. A killing intent brewed with the storm, rumbling loudly. Let's go. The last divine country in the world shall fall. Olympus. Under the blood-like setting sun, 2 tall armored guards carried a body, limp as mud, out of the palace. This crazy woman seems quieter today. One guard glanced at the figure in his hands and said with surprise, "Wasn't she quite troublesome the past couple of days? After being tortured for so many consecutive days, she's probably gone numb. This human is really tough. An ordinary lesser god would have been beaten to death by now, yet she's still alive." Humph, who told her to say nothing and keep courting death? This is what happens when you anger Lord Hades. She looks like she's almost done for. Should we go easier on her tomorrow? No need. We can't get any information from this woman anyway. The Daxiao people will be here in 1 more day and she'll die then regardless. However bad it is, she can endure 1 more day of beating, right? True. The 2 walked to the golden bird cage, threw the motionless Xia Siming inside, locked the door and left. After they walked away, the members of Phoenix team immediately rushed to Xia Siming's side, lifted her from the ground, and upon seeing the horrific wounds on her body, called out anxiously, "Captain, Captain? What are you shouting for, mourning me?" Xia Siming opened her eyes and spoke irritably. Seeing Xia Siming awake, everyone finally sighed in relief. "Captain, how do you feel?" Chao Sha asked with furrowed brows. Just the usual. Their little strength is like tickling me. Alright, give me some space, I need to sleep for a while. Xia Siming tried to stand up shakily but weakly lost her balance and was about to crash into the bird cage. Fortunately, Cao Sha was quick to catch her and slowly guided her to the edge. Captain, how many deaths today? Before Cao Sha could speak, Xia Siming interrupted him. After a moment of silence, Cao Sha truthfully said, about over 1,200 people. Why so many? The blood from both of us last night could only feed 2,000 people. Today the wind was strong, the temperature dropped suddenly, and the remaining 4,000 people haven't eaten for days. It's hard for them to hold on. After tonight, this number will probably double again. Xia Siming lowered her head, sat cross-legged facing the outside of the birdcage, her expression somewhat complex. I understand. I'll sleep for a while first. Xia Siming slowly closed her eyes, remaining as still as a monk in deep meditation. As daylight disappeared behind the mountains, her face visibly sank into darkness. Tonight, clouds obscured the sun and there were no stars in the sky. The howling wind echoed through the mountains. In the pitch-black birdcage, countless figures trembled, huddled together, as lives silently slipped away in the stillness. The members of Phoenix team sat at the edge of the birdcage, their fists tightly clenched. With their Phoenix bloodline, they could clearly sense each life passing away. When the last glimmer of light disappeared from the Olympus Mountains, Cao Sha stood up from the darkness, holding a short knife and walked silently toward the crowd. Vice Captain, count us in too. Several young women emerged from the darkness, speaking resolutely. Why aren't you sleeping? Why are you joining in? Cao Sha frowned. Get out of the way. Vice Captain, how many people can you save alone? If we help together we can save more people. Yes. Captain is asleep. With us helping you it can be done faster. At Phoenix, team members insisted on joining Cao Sha despite his persuasion. Seeing he couldn't dissuade them, Cao Sha helplessly looked back at the figure sleeping with her head down by the birdcage door and said softly, remember, don't lose too much blood. If the Phoenix blood concentration in all of us drops too much at once, we won't be able to transfuse blood to new members in the future, understand? Yes. Everyone immediately dispersed, moving silently and quickly through the crowd. Just as Cao Sha was carefully passing behind Xia Siming, a hoarse voice sounded. Cao Sha. Cao Sha was startled and quickly turned around. Captain? You're not asleep. I woke up. The figure with her back to him slowly extended her hand, pushing a plastic basin full of fresh blood from in front of her. Take it. The moment he saw the plastic basin, Cao Sha's pupils contracted sharply. He rushed to Xia Siming's side and grabbed her shoulders. Xia Siming. Do you have a death wish? Cao Sha's roar echoed in Xia Siming's ears, but the figure seemed not to hear at all. In the darkness he couldn't see Xia Siming's expression clearly, only hearing a weak voice. Don't shout, let me sleep for a while. Xia Siming's head drooped slightly, and the next moment she fell silent. In the deathly stillness, only the faint sound of a heartbeat remained, barely audible. Cao Sha opened his mouth, but the curses and questions that had reached his lips couldn't be uttered. He stared blankly at the sleeping figure for a long time before finally picking up the basin full of Phoenix blood with trembling hands and stumbling toward the crowd. Under the lightless night sky, the golden characters branded in the sky above Olympus changed once more. 1. With the rusty, salty taste falling on her lips, a ordinary girl's blurry consciousness returned. She lay on the ground, staring blankly at the figure walking past her, then came to her senses moments later and weakly reached out to grab the person's ankle, but only lightly brushed against it. But that person still stopped. Who, exactly, are you? 4 consecutive days of hunger and cold had pushed almost all ordinary people in the birdcage to their limits. The taste of a drop of blood might be completely imperceptible to them, and even as they awakened from the edge of death, they wouldn't know who had saved them, but a very small number of people realized this point. The person remained silent for a moment, then slowly spoke 2 words in the wind. Phoenix. After speaking, he turned and left, moving to the next dying ordinary person, similarly dripping a drop of Phoenix blood into their mouth. The girl murmured these 2 words, and as a warm current surged within her body, she fell back into a deep sleep. Without notice, dawn had arrived. That night, death's scythe couldn't harvest a single life. Because in this golden birdcage, a burning phoenix was roaring fiercely at it. The morning sun rose from the east, golden light penetrating through gaps in the dark clouds, illuminating the birdcage in the mountains. A blood-covered girl sat cross-legged, facing the temple, her back to everyone. She lowered her head, and the layers of gruesome blood scabs on her back seemed to don a golden cloak in the morning sunlight. Creaking, the birdcage door was opened by 2 guards. Huh. So many people are still alive. One guard casually scanned the birdcage, speaking with surprise. The wind was quite strong last night. I thought at least half more would die. They're quite resilient. Why bother about that? Those Daxiao people should arrive today, but they'll all die sooner or later. True, let's drag that woman out first. One guard stepped into the birdcage, reaching out to grab Xia Siming, who had her head lowered, when suddenly a hand shot out like lightning and grabbed his wrist. Take your filthy hands off our captain. Chao Sha stared at the guard with bloodshot eyes, speaking hoarsely. The guard's face darkened as he narrowed his eyes at the man before him, unable to hold back a cold laugh. What's this? On your last day you've grown bolder? You don't actually believe those Daxia people can save you, do you? The guard's aura suddenly erupted as he tried to wrench his hand free from Chao Sha's grip. But no matter how hard he tried, Chao Sha's hand didn't budge. The guard was, after all, just a guard, not a deity. Chao Sha's level was even slightly higher than his, so naturally he wouldn't easily let go. Only then did the guard realize that there were still a few human experts hidden among these people. Of course, in Olympus they were nothing. The other guard immediately raised his hand, sending a beam of light toward the sky, their distress signal. The next moment, a divine shadow swept across the distant mountain peak, rapidly flying toward them. Chao Sha showed no fear at this sight. His hand discreetly waved behind his back, signaling the other members of the Phoenix team not to act rashly. Then he slowly spoke. They will certainly come. They will definitely come. Ridiculous. The guard sneered. Do you know how long the gods of Olympus have been preparing for this day? Now there are 4 or 5 divine prohibitions overlapping outside the mountains, the highest level of defense. Even if they really came, breaking through these 4 or 5 prohibitions would take at least a day. Not to mention the arrangements between these mountains. They are just a group of humans. If they dare to step into Olympus, they won't last 10 minutes before being completely annihilated. Of course, you won't see any of this, because while they struggle to break through the prohibitions, this birdcage will be ground to dust in the sea right before their eyes. Aren't they arrogant enough to dare hunt gods? I wonder how entertaining their expressions will be when they helplessly watch you ordinary people drown in Olympus while they can't even break through the prohibitions. The human divine nation is ultimately just a joke. Hearing the guard's words, everyone in the birdcage immediately turned pale. Veins bulged one by one on Chao Sha's arm, and the pain instantly transformed the sneering guard's expression into one of ferocity. So a rat has sneaked in. Hades' figure materialized, his gaze briefly glancing at Chao Sha before looking away, his expression somewhat displeased. I thought something had happened. You can't even handle a human this weak, truly useless. With a slight curl of Hades' finger, the guard whose wrist was grabbed by Chao Sha instantly twisted like a rope, bright red blood splashing all over Chao Sha before the guard collapsed limply to the ground. Chao Sha frowned as he watched Hades approach, took a deep breath and walked to the birdcage door. I am Chao Sha, one of the high-ranking members of Daxia's Night Watchers. If you want to know Daxia's trump card, go ahead and use your methods to see if you can force it out of me. You? High-ranking? Hades sneered. Your strength doesn't even match that woman's, and she's just Athena's proxy. If she's not high-ranking, how could you be? The role of Night Watchers' high-ranking members is to decide major internal affairs, not combat. Except for the commander-in-chief, strength isn't important for other high-ranking members, Chao Sha calmly replied. Hades narrowed his eyes, carefully observing Chao Sha for a moment before speaking grimly. Very well, since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I certainly won't let you go. Chao Sha's expression remained unchanged as he stepped toward the outside of the birdcage. Just then, a pale hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. Chao Sha was startled and turned to look. Xia Siming was sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly raising her lowered head. You don't need to go. Xia Siming, what are you doing? Xia Siming's gaze passed over Chao Sha to the sky above. The corners of her bloodless lips curved slightly upward. You don't need to go. Olympus is already finished. Chao Sha frowned in confusion and followed her gaze, his pupils suddenly contracting. Under the heavy black clouds, the characters that had been projected in the sky above Olympus suddenly began to flash violently, changing from their original visible gold color to dark red. The original character also transformed into a massive times. Boom boom boom. Almost simultaneously, ancient and deep horn sounds echoed across the skies of Olympus. A brilliant golden sword beam shot down from space through the clouds, precisely striking the center of the intersecting dark red marks in the sky. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion made everyone's eardrums ring, and a golden miracle like an ocean engulfed the sky. Golden sword light fell upon the Olympus mountain range, forcing several god-level barriers to appear. These complex ancient barriers overlapped, forming a thick hemispherical shield that enveloped the mountains. The shockwave from the collision caused numerous peaks to violently shake. The aftershocks swept through, sending large amounts of rubble tumbling down the mountainsides, causing several temples to collapse into ruins. The golden birdcage also shook with the trembling earth. Those inside fell to the ground, barely maintaining their balance. They stared in bewilderment at the sky surging with divine power, their eyes filled with unprecedented shock and fear. How did they arrive so quickly? Isn't today just the beginning? Hades stood before the golden birdcage, his expression darkening. No longer concerned with Chao Sha and Xia Siming, he locked the birdcage door with a backward motion and transformed into a black shadow, darting toward the central divine peak. The lone remaining guard, now terrified by the sword that had descended from the sky, stood in a daze for a moment before dutifully remaining at his post in front of the birdcage. He gazed at the golden sea in the sky, and a thought suddenly emerged uncontrollably in his mind. They couldn't actually break in, could they? At the mountain summit, Poseidon, gripping his trident, stood before the golden throne, his eyes fixed intently on the golden sea in the sky, his expression extremely grim. Seraphim. Damn it, wasn't Michael dead? Where did a second seraphim come from? It must be Lin Chiye. Hades' figure quickly appeared beside him and said gravely, he was originally Michael's proxy. Now that Michael is dead, he must have inherited the complete, mortal divine domain. But wasn't he only at the human ceiling level in Great Xia? How did he get to space? Now is not the time to discuss this. Poseidon flipped his palm, revealing the essence of Olympus. Streams of light flowed from it, connecting with the barriers surrounding Olympus. With seraphim power, breaking through these barriers is just a matter of time. We must mobilize all deities and prepare for battle. How much time do we have? 4 hours at most. The gods are already being mobilized here. 4 hours is definitely. Before Hades could finish, a young figure with 6 seraphim wings instantly flashed beneath the cloud layer. Seraphim Lin Chiye, expressionless, looked down at Olympus in the storm below, which reflected in his golden burning eyes. He gently raised his hand and a broken sword appeared in his palm. A brilliant summoning array lit up in the void, and the next moment, a broken sword tip was summoned. It was the blade of the Kusanagi sword that had broken in the Divine Mental Hospital years ago. Seraphim Lin Chiye held the broken sword and slowly thrust it into the golden sea waves. The miracle receded, and when he pulled it out again, a complete Kusanagi sword emerged with a sharp hum that echoed through the skies. The sharp sword light cut through the golden sea of miracles, and an extremely terrifying aura spread from the sky. It was a complete claimed first killing divine weapon of Takamagara. Sensing the terrifying power of the Kusanagi sword, Hades' expression grew even darker. He stared intently at the sky and asked hoarsely, "Now, how long do we have?" 1 hour, Poseidon replied through gritted teeth. Beneath the firmament, Seraphim Lin Chiye, wielding the Kusanagi sword, stomped forcefully in the void, and a massive purple domain suddenly expanded. The moment this domain covered the entire Olympus region, the 4 or 5 layers of divine war barriers simultaneously began to tremble, as if losing control, with countless cracks frantically spreading across their surfaces. Divine ruins, final king's law. How is this possible? Poseidon exclaimed in shock as he felt the connection between the barriers and the essence being forcibly severed. The next moment, A flash of sword light easily penetrated all barriers. The golden tide surged through that sword-created gap into Olympus, instantly transforming into a colossal miracle sword that slashed between the mountains. Boom! The gods only saw a golden light cutting through the entire Olympus from east to west, followed by the ground beneath them violently shaking. At that moment, if someone were looking down from the sky, they would see the entire barrier and the Olympus mountains within it split in half by a single sword strike. The surging seawater frantically poured into the center of the two mountain ranges, forming a strait. After delivering this strike, the seraphim Lin Chia beneath the dark clouds saw the divine flames in his eyes rapidly dim. He became like a stone statue floating in the air, falling into slumber. Broken through? In front of the golden birdcage, the lone remaining guard struggled to his feet. Looking at the divine realms split in two before him, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. How was this possible? Those were the highest-level divine war barriers. Weren't they supposed to be impenetrable for an entire day? Yet he had delivered just one sword strike, and not only were the barriers broken, but the mountains themselves were split in two. The once magnificent divine realm had been forcibly turned into a strait. He stared at the scene before him as if in a dream. He looked into the distance along the direction of the strait. Beyond the mountains, the outlines of several massive exploration ships gradually emerged from the mist. Bright searchlights tore through a corner of the gray mist. These exploration ships sailed through the breach in the barrier into the strait. Through the hazy mist, figures could be seen standing firmly on the ships. They're here, they're here. The guard, watching those silhouettes in the mist, felt an unprecedented fear rising in his heart. The people of Great Xia are here. They've broken through. This shout, mixed with the humming of horns, echoed through every corner of the mountains. Divine shadows rose from various parts of Olympus, swarming toward this location. The barriers had broken too quickly, rendering all the plans prepared by the Olympian gods virtually useless. If not for this shout, they wouldn't even have known where these humans had entered Olympus. They had imagined 10,000 possibilities of how the Great Xia people might attack Olympus, but never would they have thought that a seraphim would descend from the sky and break all barriers with a single sword strike. Poseidon's expression was extremely grim. He stepped forward, his form instantly flashing above the strait. Knowing I'm here yet daring to enter by ship, truly seeking death. Poseidon's trident vibrated in the air, and the entire sea immediately began to roar. The water beneath the exploration ships transformed into countless monstrous shapes, reaching for those human figures in the mist. Wuchuan. The figure in the deep red cloak at the front of the lead exploration ship spoke softly. The storm swept through the strait between the mountains. At the bow of the left exploration ship, the young man's black hair was blown upward, and his sharp eyes instantly focused. In the next moment, an aura filled with majesty and dominance rapidly spread out. The seawater about to smash the hull suddenly stopped, and countless water droplets hung in midair like transparent jewels adorning the strait. Water droplets soaked his clothes. The young man wielding the authority of dominance fearlessly raised his head to look at Poseidon in the sky. His tall figure standing amidst the suspended water droplets momentarily resembled the champion marquis from thousands of years ago. The exploration ships sailed through the strait unhindered. The power of dominance and Poseidon's divine power were fiercely contending in a place invisible to the naked eye. Poseidon's gaze fell upon Wuchuan, anger igniting in his chest. A human youth dared to wrestle with him? Did he think Poseidon was made of clay? Surging divine power swirled wildly within Poseidon's body. The seawater in the strait began to tremble again. Veins bulged on Wuchuan's neck as he continued to wrestle with the god, his eyes showing no intention of yielding. At this moment the figure in deep red spoke again. Qin Han. Clang. A crisp sound of a sword being drawn rang out. The heavy military coat fluttered amidst the suspended water droplets. A blade gleam imbued with netherworld energy swept across the scene in an instant. The frozen waves shattered explosively under the slash, transforming into a rain of fragments drifting between the straits. Qin Han's military boots landed steadily on the deck of the right exploration ship, followed by a light sound as the straight sword returned to its scabbard. Fragments of rain drifted down. The outlines of the 3 exploration ships had completely appeared in the vision of the Olympian gods. 8 figures stood tall on the ships, their clothes fluttering wildly in the storm. Lin Jie Shinqingzhu Wu Laogo Guanzai Qinfuzi Xiaopinga Qinhan Wuchuan. Except for Destiny Monk who guarded the headquarters, and Lu Wuwei and Wang Mian who went to sea to search for Nix. All of Daxia's top combat forces had gathered here. The sky of Olympus was dyed blood-red by the enormous times. At the bow of the central exploration ship, Lin Jie rested one hand on the hilt of God's calamity, calmly looking up at the divine shadows in the sky. The twilight of the gods has come. Daxia's night watchmen are here to slay gods. Clang. A deep explosion resonated from the black gold long blade, and invisible ripples instantly swept across the entire Olympus. As these invisible ripples passed by, the Greek gods felt their power of laws suddenly shake, like a pond surface disturbed by strong winds, churning uncontrollably. They were stunned at first, then expressions of horror appeared on their faces. Dispelling laws? How was this possible? Laws were the foundation of divinity. For this human to possess the power to dispel laws was an absolute threat and calamity to any mythology. A Kusanagi sword capable of cleaving all things, a god's calamity blade able to dispel laws. How many trump cards against gods did this human possess? Just a few humans, yet you dare call yourselves the twilight of the gods? Poseidon opened his mouth with a cold smile. Poseidon was not foolish. He could see Lin Jie's intention. Whether it was the earlier sword strike that cut through the barrier and mountains, or the resonating sound of the god's calamity, blade echoing throughout Olympus, both were meant to crush the gods' confidence before the battle began to make them feel fear. The Olympian gods had been in turmoil since the upheaval 4 years ago. If they became afraid of these humans and believed in this twilight of the gods nonsense, their fighting power would plummet. As the current king of the Olympian gods, he had to first defeat these humans' momentum and inspire the gods. Poseidon raised his hand, and the golden birdcage among the distant mountains began to shake violently, as if grabbed by an invisible hand at the top, rising into the air with a rumbling sound. Take a good look. What are these? Lin Jie and the others looked in the direction of the voice, their pupils suddenly contracting. Under the dark red clouds, a huge golden birdcage had flown over the surging sea. Terrifying waves crashed against the surface of the cage like monstrous beasts, producing sounds of metal clashing. Inside the birdcage, densely packed figures fearfully rose from the ground, screaming as they pushed toward the center of the cage. Screams of agony, terror, and wailing mixed together in a scene of utter chaos. Seeing this, a look of astonishment appeared in everyone's eyes. Lin Jie stared blankly at the golden birdcage above the waves. After several seconds, as if realizing something, his hand suddenly tightened on the sword hilt. Murderous intent erupted instantly. Veins bulged on the back of Lin Jie's hand. His eyes widened in anger, his entire being like a volcano about to erupt, his chest heaving violently. Destiny! Traces of fresh blood seeped from his lips as he nearly bit through his teeth, roaring in fury. Ah! Brilliant! This is brilliant! That monk deceived you. The person you trusted most lied to you. These people aren't dead at all. Oh, these poor wretches have been imprisoned in Olympus all this time. Who knows how these Greek gods have tortured them? Look at them, so thinly dressed in this cold wind. About a third are lying motionless on the ground, probably frozen or starved to death. Poor souls. In this foreign land, facing gods they cannot resist, they can only curl up for warmth, watching helplessly as their dearest parents, children, and friends die before their eyes. These past few days must have been hell for them. Lin Jie, do you think they have prayed to the heavens? They must have prayed, right? These helpless, pitiful wretches must have prayed countless times for someone to save them. Perhaps they cried their eyes out in that birdcage, knocked their heads bloody, but did anyone answer them? No. They could only die in despair. And you, my dear Commander Lin, you could have saved them. If you had come earlier, you could have saved everyone. But why didn't you come? Ha ha ha. Kev's voice frantically poured into Lin Jie's ears. Murderous intent, almost solidified, spread wildly around Lin Jie. Jie. Noticing Lin Jie's slight trembling, Shin Qingzhu spoke with concern. See it clearly? This is the generous gift I prepared for your Daxia. Poseidon, seeing the change in Lin Chia's expression, felt greatly satisfied and spoke leisurely. "Weren't you so impressive? Splitting my Olympus with one sword, claiming to be the twilight of the gods. Now aren't you just watching helplessly as I kill them all? What night watchman of Dacia? Nothing special after all." Poseidon's voice fell, and a violent gust of wind exploded beneath Lin Chia's feet. The deck of the exploration ship was instantly torn to pieces. Surging waves rolled around him, and beneath that wildly dancing deep red cloak, a pair of bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at Poseidon. "You want to try?" In the sky above, the slumbering six-winged seraph suddenly opened its eyes. Dazzling golden light ignited again from its pupils. Majestic divine might pressed down, weighing on the hearts of all Olympian gods, making them feel breathless. Poseidon frowned. He hadn't expected that after delivering that one sword strike, the seraph would still have remaining power. But he was certain that the seraph couldn't deliver a second identical sword strike now, and even if it did, the four main gods together could block it. "What? Let's see if your sword is faster, or if I kill them faster." Poseidon snarled. As his palm grabbed at the air, the waves near the birdcage instantly stilled, then transformed into thousands of fine water needles, suspended around the cage. With just a thought from Poseidon, these needles could precisely kill all humans inside. These remaining few thousand people were Lin Chia's weakness, and Poseidon's leverage against the people of Great Xia. "Poseidon, you bastard!" Inside the golden birdcage, the faces of the Phoenix team members turned extremely ugly. "If you want to kill us, just do it. Using us to threaten the commander, what kind of sea god are you?" "No. He's not trying to threaten, he just wants to kill us to boost the morale of the Olympian gods." "This is bad." Cao Sha looked back and saw that beyond the panicking crowd, a figure covered in blood scabs was sitting silently in front of the gate, head lowered, motionless. Since yesterday, Xia Siming seemed to have been in that position in the same posture without moving. "Captain?" Cao Sha called softly. "Think." The sound of metal falling rang out as a badge dropped from Xia Siming's body and rolled aside. The figure supported herself with one hand on the ground, slowly rising from the dried pool of blood. Her pale arms gradually regained their color, and she brushed aside her golden hair matted with blood, revealing a weak yet defiant young woman's face. "Poseidon, what the hell does he know about night watchers?" Xia Siming cursed hoarsely. Seeing the badge that had rolled from in front of Xia Siming, Cao Sha froze for a moment, his pupils slightly contracting. "Captain, you." Xia Siming walked barefoot to the edge of the golden bird cage, leaving bloody footprints with each step, dark red scabs covering her entire body, a horrifying sight. The storm whirled over the sea surface, blowing her tangled hair into a mess. A golden flame suddenly ignited from within the blood scabs, setting her hair ablaze, like a golden fire swaying in the wind. Xia Siming slowly spread her arms, proudly looking down at the Olympian gods in the distance, and spoke word by word. "Today, I'll show these ignorant foreign gods what Great Xia never dies, Phoenix, lives forever means." Whoosh! All the blood scabs on Xia Siming's body burst open at once, blood transforming into golden flames surging out, instantly engulfing her form. In the astonished gaze of the Phoenix team members, the golden sea of fire swept up everyone in the birdcage, intense firelight flowing through the gaps in the cage's railings, igniting the sea surface below. Seeing this sudden change, Poseidon's heart sank sharply. Without time to think, he directly controlled the thousands of water needles around the birdcage, shooting them all out, but before they could touch the golden sea of fire, they all evaporated completely. In everyone's sight, a clear phoenix cry sounded from the sea surface. The flowing golden fire spread to both sides like a pair of outstretched phoenix wings, covering the sky. With a flap of its wings, the enormous body crashed against the inside of the birdcage, creating a thunderous boom. This crash didn't break through the cage, only slightly distorting the golden railings near the gate. But immediately after, a second impact followed. The fire phoenix trapped in the golden birdcage crashed against the railings like a madman, churning the flame-covered seawater below into chaos. The next moment, a miraculous sword beam descended from the sky, tearing open a gap in the surface of the birdcage, and the golden flames seized the opportunity to rip it open. With a resounding phoenix cry, A massive fire phoenix burst out of the golden bird cage, breaking through the storm to soar in the sky, its free wings shining beneath the dark clouds. The phoenix breaking out of the cage directly stunned the Olympian gods present. They never imagined that these people would escape in such an inconceivable way despite their arrangements. Poseidon's chest heaved violently. He had just wanted to use this birdcage to boost the gods' morale, but in the blink of an eye the cage was broken. This was undoubtedly a slap in their faces. He roared in anger, hurling the trident in his palm. Driven by terrifying divine power, the trident instantly transformed into a beam of light streaking across the sea surface. The seawater frantically surging to both sides, the entire sea area split by this strike. Just as the beam was about to hit the phoenix, a deep red shadow flashed through the void, two long blades drawn simultaneously. One snow-white, one black-gold, the two blades firmly blocked the sea-splitting trident. Lin Chia's enraged eyes seemed to burn with raging flames, and with terrifying strength, he forcibly intercepted the strike in midair. Dazzling sparks flew, and a thunderous roar echoed beneath the sky. Kill! Lin Chia's voice was like a signal, and the next moment, all figures on the exploration ship leaped up at once. Gray wings spread in the storm as Shen Qingzhu spat out the cigarette from his lips. A wisp of flame traced before him, instantly evolving into a fire tornado that engulfed the entire strait, roaring and raging between the mountains. Wu Laogo's eyes flashed with light as if he had become a different person. Raising his stone sun, melodious music drifted with the fierce wind. Qin Fushi, Xiaopinga, Qin Han, Guanzai, and Wu Quan charged toward the sky above the strait, heading straight for the surrounding lesser gods. Divine power flashed everywhere and the entire battlefield fell into chaos. Hum. The trident blocked by Lin Chia hummed and automatically flew backward, but before it could fly far, it suddenly suspended in midair. Invisible threads floated from Lin Chia's fingertips, tightly wrapping around the trident's surface. No matter how Poseidon tried to drive it, he couldn't move it back even half an inch. Above the surging sea, Lin Chia held his dual blades and spoke grimly. "You think you can take it back?" Looking at the trident floating in front of Lin Chia, Poseidon stood frozen in place. He still had a connection with this divine weapon, but for some unknown reason, the trident seemed more intimate with Lin Chia, as if the two had known each other for tens of thousands of years, like companions who had walked together to this day. And he, Poseidon, was merely a casual fling the trident had found outside when it was bored. Seeing his most beloved weapon taken by Lin Chia, Poseidon was so angry his lungs nearly exploded, but just then screams and cries of alarm came from one side of the strait. Under the melodious sound of the Sun flute, many of Olympus's lesser gods had fallen into chaos. This type of area of effect psychological attack was already the most troublesome in group battles. Not to mention these lesser gods were not as powerful as Hu Jia, who was playing the Sun. They had initially held the numerical advantage, but suddenly found themselves at a disadvantage. The underworld king Hades and Dionysus tried to kill Hu Jia, but were blocked by Shen Qingzhu alone. The silent angel fought two opponents without falling behind, and instead fought more fiercely as the battle continued. Below the supreme realm, the combat power of humans who had ascended to godhood was absolutely among the strongest among the major gods. Whether it was the burning angel Lin Chia, the silent angel Shen Qingzhu, or the god of mind Hu Jia, none of them were easy opponents. Add to that the 5 human powerhouses who could rival the major gods, and as soon as the two sides clashed, Olympus showed signs of collapse. Seeing this, Poseidon decided to temporarily ignore his trident and directly distanced himself from Lin Chia. He flipped his palm and an origin that resembled a torch appeared. Poseidon certainly knew the power of humans who had ascended to godhood, so from the beginning he had no intention of confronting the Daxia forces head-on. But Lin Chia had broken through their barrier with one sword strike, directly disrupting their plans. As the torch origin lit up, streams of starlight dispersed from it, flowing into the surrounding void. A mysterious power emerged from within the Olympian gods, and the dark clouds covering Olympus dispersed. The countless stars in the sky visibly became more brilliant, hanging in the high heavens as if burning fiercely. The Olympus defensive barrier, starry battlefield. Unlike the barriers previously layered outside the mountains, this barrier had no physical form. It connected every inch of Olympus territory. As the aura of laws rippled, the entire battlefield seemed to be cut into different regions, dissolving into the starlight. Lin Chia frowned, and in the next moment the Olympian gods and the Daxiao forces simultaneously disappeared. The Olympus mountains seemed to have been scrambled, twisting and distorting in the starlight. When the starlight receded, the divine country had completely transformed. The Olympus mountain range, originally split in two, had been divided into 4 different divine mountains. Each mountain connected to one of the 4 brightest stars in the sky, each a different color, but the aura emanating from the peak of each divine mountain was extremely terrifying. This is. Lin Chia was on the sea surface, furthest from the straight battlefield, so he wasn't affected by the starlight. Besides him, only Poseidon remained, holding the origin and standing in the center of the 4 divine mountains. Lin Chia narrowed his eyes. In his vision he could clearly see threads of cause and effect falling from the 4 stars. Knowing you can't win against us in a direct fight, you've scattered us and planned to use prearranged mythical killing formations to defeat us one by one. Setting up this barrier must have cost you quite some time, right? Lin Chia quickly guessed Poseidon's intention and said with a cold smile. 4 divine mountains connected to stars, 4 mythical killing formations emitting terrifying pressure. This was what the Olympian gods were relying on to deal with Dacia. So what if it took time? Don't forget, this is Olympus, our home ground. Poseidon said grimly. 4 mythical killing formations, each with the power to instantly kill several major god-level beings. With the starry battlefield in place, even if the heavenly court returned, they couldn't do anything to us. Who do you think you are? Lin Chia's gaze drifted to the torch origin in Poseidon's hand, and he calmly said, Is that so? Then if I destroy this origin, would this starry battlefield collapse on its own? Hearing these words, Poseidon's expression changed, and he quickly hid the Olympus origin behind his back, fearing that Lin Chia would use the same strange method he had used to take the trident to snatch their origin. Although it sounded absurd, Poseidon felt he might actually be capable of it. After all, Lin Chia could even place a countdown above their divine country through the origin. Poseidon sneered, Want to destroy the origin? Come and try it yourself. I'll be waiting for you on the highest divine mountain. As his words fell, Poseidon transformed into a beam of light and rushed toward the peak of the highest divine mountain, disappearing into the flowing starlight. Lin Chia didn't immediately give chase. Destroying a divine country with deep foundations wasn't so simple. Although they maintained the advantage, as Olympus had said, this was their home ground after all. One small mistake could lead to disaster. Lin Chia turned his head toward a certain direction and flew off. On the beach, specks of golden embers dissipated in the air, and thousands of figures lay motionless on the ground. The phoenix that Xia Siming had transformed into had enveloped them all, rescuing them from the golden bird cage, but the terrifying mental power contained within was not something ordinary people could withstand. Except for a few members of the Phoenix squad, all the ordinary people had been knocked unconscious. Captain! Chao Sha struggled to get up from the ground and rushed to the blood-covered figure, shouting. Don't shout, it's too noisy. Xia Siming lay flat on the ground, her eyes gazing at the starry sky above, weakly saying, If you want to mourn, no rush now, at my funeral. Cry louder, it'll give me more face. Chao Sha stared at her rapidly darkening face, about to say something when a deep red figure flew over from the distance. Xia Siming, how are you? Lin Chia quickly walked to her side and asked gravely. The moment he saw Xia Siming's complexion, Lin Chia's heart sank. He knew the side effects of using ghost god summoning better than anyone. The Xia Siming before him had clearly reached the limit of the drug's effectiveness. Lin's skinflint, was the phoenix I turned into big enough? At this point, Xia Siming had completely let go, not caring about any commander or rank, saying whatever pleased her. Say less. Lin Chia didn't argue with her. After confirming Xia Siming's physical condition, he stood up and walked toward one of the divine mountains. Hold on for a while, I'll go bring Hu Jia to you right now. He had just taken a step when a hand grabbed the hem of his clothes. Lin Chia looked back to see Xia Siming lying on the ground, holding on to him with one hand, weakly smiling. Spiritual immortality. Forget about it. Lin Chia was stunned. Why? Calling you Lin Skinflint. It's really true? I'm about to die. And you still want me to live in someone else's brain to work for you? Dream on. Xia Siming weakly grinned, but then suddenly coughed up several mouthfuls of fresh blood. Her gaze moved away from Lin Chia and looked up at the starry sky, her eyes showing longing. What I want most is freedom. This life I happened to become a night watchman. Freedom was definitely gone. I want to give myself a very long vacation. In my next life I'd rather be a free bird, going wherever I want. Lin Chia looked at those gradually dimming eyes and opened his mouth. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm just complaining. You just did what you had to do. Honestly, these years you've given me more time off than Commander Yi and Commander Sui combined. You're already the best commander in my heart. Xia Siming struggled to raise her hand, seemingly wanting to give Lin Chia a thumbs up, but it fell limply to the ground. Her life force rapidly faded away, her eyes closed and a faint smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. Goodbye, Commander Lin. The golden remnants of fire scattered and disappeared in the air. Under the dark red sky, only the endless sound of waves remained, buzzing. Lin Chia held Xia Siming's body, kneeling on the beach like a stone statue, motionless. Commander Lin. The members of the Phoenix team gathered around, their eyes red from crying. Lin Chia's chest heaved violently. After a moment he gently put down Xia Siming's body. Who caused her wounds? It was a guard, he's already dead. Chao Sha paused, raising his bloodshot eyes. However, it was Poseidon and Hades who ordered them to torture the captain, saying they wanted to extract intelligence about Great Xia, but the captain didn't say a single word. Chao Sha recounted everything that had happened over the past 2 days. Lin Chia's face grew increasingly grim, the coldness between his brows making the other Phoenix members tremble involuntarily. I understand. Lin Chia slowly stood up and looked to the side. Besides Xia Siming, among the dark mass of people lying on the shore, nearly 2,000 had become cold corpses. They were ordinary people who had frozen or starved to death in the cage by the Olympian gods. Lin Chia's hand resting on his sword hilt suddenly tightened. Clang. The sword's cry echoed under the sky. Lin Chia thrust his straight sword into the ground before the corpses, the blade pointing toward the 4 divine mountains. The golden 7 mark glowed in the darkness. Lin Chia stepped forward, his deep red cloak dancing wildly in the storm, his killing intent almost tangible. He took a deep breath, his voice echoing above the 4 divine mountains. Great Xia Night Watchman and all human powerhouses, heed my command. Today we hunt gods, leave no corpses intact. We must extract their heart bones and dye the divine mountains with blood. On Ghost Mountain, a deep red figure slowly pushed open the heavy palace doors. A cold, gloomy air surged out from inside, covering the ground with a layer of frost. Xin Qingzhu lowered his head to hold a cigarette between his lips, rubbing his fingers to light it. The faint flame illuminated a corner of the darkness. He took a deep drag and exhaled misty smoke that drifted into the hall. You heard it too. Our commander is determined to spill blood today. Will you offer your neck yourself or should I come and chop it off? Xin Qingzhu said calmly. Boom boom boom. Ghostly green flames lit up one after another inside the great hall. Countless gray-black ghost shadows frantically darted around, their piercing howls making one's scalp tingle. Strange patterns lit up throughout the hall, like gazes from the underworld staring intently at Xin Qingzhu at the door. How presumptuous. The cold voice of Hades, the king of the underworld, rang out. With me controlling this netherworld killing formation, even a great Xia golden immortal would certainly die. If you can walk out of this divine mountain alive today, I'll cut off my own head and give it to you. Hearing these words, Xin Qingzhu raised an eyebrow. You said it yourself. 6 gray wings opened behind Xin Qingzhu's back. His gaze instantly turned cold and his form transformed into a gray lightning bolt, crashing into the mythical killing formation. The next moment, gray embers like roaring waves surged out from the hall doors. Wine God Mountain. Lin Chia's voice echoed over the divine mountain, slowly fading away. The black cloak fluttered in the wind. The figure raised his head, holding a stone sun flute in one hand and smiled slightly. Hu Jia accepts the command. He slowly walked up the stone steps. As soon as his foot touched the mountaintop, the ground seemed to melt, turning into dark red wine that fell downward. Hu Jia paused but did not fall with it. Dark red wine rain surrounded him and swept through the air. Ferocious and fierce faces emerged from the wine rain, like drunken, insane and mindless intoxicated people. The moment he saw these faces, Hujia's cheeks also flushed red and he seemed drunk, his mind gradually slowing. But this drunken dizziness only lasted for a moment before he came to his senses, mysterious light flowing in his eyes. So it's also a mental mythical killing formation. Perfect for me. He gently placed the stone soon to his lips, and the next moment, its melodious sound echoed over the divine mountain. Lin Chia slowly stopped between two divine mountains. He looked up at the sky, where cause and effect threads hung down from the divine mountains connected to 4 stars. Through these connections he could clearly know which people existed on which divine mountain. Hu Jiao was on Wine God Mountain and Brother Zhai was on Ghost Mountain. One possessed the immortal mind god, the other was a death angel with the essence of hell. Lin Chia wasn't worried about them facing the mythical killing formations. The other human powerhouses facing the lesser gods shouldn't be a problem either. But apart from these 2 divine mountains, no one had gone to challenge the Sun God Mountain where Apollo resided, or the Sea God Mountain where Poseidon was located. Lin Chia could of course split himself in 2, letting his main body face Apollo and his burning angel avatar face Poseidon, but this would leave his main body without the ability to slay gods, and with the burning angel's divine power depleted, it would be difficult to fight effectively. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Chia seemed to think of something. He took out an object from his pocket and placed it in his palm. It was a game cartridge with a blank label. "Lend me a hand, Long Bai." Lin Chia gently pushed this cartridge into the void. Click. A crisp spring mechanism sound echoed from the void, as if an invisible game console had inserted this cartridge, followed by a slight humming startup sound. Loading. As this small text appeared in midair, countless points of light gathered in the space, condensing into a doorway. The door's appearance constantly changed as if pieced together from various games, sometimes appearing as colorful pixel art, sometimes as a blood-red apocalyptic portal, sometimes as a small restaurant entrance with an open for business sign, sometimes as a metal door rigged with explosives. Loading complete. The moment this text appeared, the doorknob suddenly turned. A white-haired youth in white clothing walked out from behind the door, smiling. Countless game data swirled like a vortex behind the door. The moment his body stepped through that game portal, the data solidified into flesh, landing firmly on the ground, his cross-star eyes bright as stars. "I'm here, Brother Chia," Yoshi Longbai said softly. Lin Chia stared in amazement at Yoshi Longbai, who emanated the aura of a divine realm, and at the doorway connecting the game world to the real world behind him, momentarily stunned. This entrance style was truly beyond his expectations. "How do you feel?" Lin Chia asked. "Great." Yoshi Longbai took a deep breath, exuding confidence from head to toe. "Never felt better. The sun god Apollo and his mythical killing formation. Can you handle them?" "No problem." Yoshi Longbai nodded with certainty. Lin Chia made an affirmative sound, removing divine calamity from his waist and holding it out to Longbai. "I've kept it safe for you all this time. Now it's time for you to take it back." Yoshi Longbai looked at the black and gold blade and shook his head. "Brother Chia, I'm just a character who walked out of a game. Even if I took this blade, it couldn't return to the game world with me. From now on, you should continue to carry it." Seeing the seriousness in his eyes, Lin Chia hesitated for a moment before putting divine calamity away. "All right, be careful." Yoshi Longbai smiled, looked up at the divine mountain connected to the red star, his ankle-length white hair fluttering as he stepped onto the stone stairs. Lin Chia watched his departing figure, then turned towards Sea God Mountain. One white figure and one red figure gradually disappeared into the starlight. Sun God Mountain. 9 towering stone pillars stood at the mountain peak. On the central pillar, a massive sacred chariot hovered in midair. Apollo sat at the front of the chariot, his eyes coldly watching the direction of the ascending stone stairs. A moment later, as if sensing something, he let out a slight sound of surprise. "He didn't go to Poseidon?" A figure emerged from the starlight, and Apollo's eyes showed signs of astonishment. The Great Xia had only sent 3 main gods this time. According to their original plan, one of the 4 divine mountains would inevitably be vacant. They just needed to wait for Lin Chia to choose which mountain to climb, and then immediately transfer all human powerhouses to the remaining mountain to annihilate them with the mythical killing formation. Human powerhouses weren't gods after all, their combat strength far inferior to human deities, and they lacked the power to slay gods. As long as they were lured into the mythical killing formation, their death would be certain. Now that Ji Tianshi and the Mind God had gone to Ghost God Mountain and Wine God Mountain respectively, according to Apollo's original guess, the last one, Lin Chia, should have gone to Sea God Mountain, since he had no grudge against Apollo, but Poseidon was filled with hatred. He had already prepared to eliminate the human powerhouses, but unexpectedly, another person had now come up the mountain. The figure emerged from the starlight, stepping onto the peak of Sun God Mountain. Seeing the tall white-haired youth, Apollo was startled, the confusion in his eyes growing stronger. Who is this? Among the 8 people who infiltrated Olympus, there didn't seem to be anyone like him? Sun God Apollo? Yoji Longbai looked directly at the figure above the stone pillar and calmly said, "Your stats aren't that impressive." Hearing these words, Apollo was stunned. What stats? The next moment, the void above his head suddenly began to fluctuate, and a red health bar and a blue divine power bar appeared simultaneously. Below the 2 bars there was even a dense array of icons. Sun God's body, faith enhancement, killing formation core, yang essence deficiency. Apollo's gaze wandered bewilderedly over these icons. Whenever he looked at an icon, an information panel would automatically appear before his eyes, describing his status and buffs in detail. After a brief moment of confusion, Apollo's face suddenly showed an expression of disbelief. The descriptions on these panels were incredibly detailed, some things even he himself hadn't been aware of, but now they appeared before him in this inconceivable form. "What have you done?" Apollo angrily demanded. He looked at Yoji Longbai and realized that there were similar panels above him as well, but the difference was that Longbai's health bar, divine power bar and all enhancement statuses were marked as unknown. When his gaze focused on one of the statuses, an encrypted panel would appear. Access denied. "I've simply applied the rules of the game world to this battlefield," Yoji Longbai said calmly. "All your abilities will be displayed before me in data form. In front of me you have no secrets." Game world. Apollo's face showed confusion. "Then what about you? Why can't I see yours?" Yoji Longbai smiled slightly. "A boss's stats are always more mysterious, aren't they?" Apollo didn't understand Longbai's words, but that didn't stop him from attacking directly. As mysterious patterns lit up on the surface of the 9 stone pillars, a brilliant sun ignited out of thin air behind the chariot he was sitting on. At the same time, golden chariots carrying the sun appeared above the other 8 stone pillars. 9 blazing suns burned fiercely, as if to incinerate everything on the mountain peak. Apollo uses skill, mythical killing formation, 9 suns scorching heaven. Click here to view skill details. Unknown plugin loading. Plugin loading complete. Skill warning feature enabled. Auto dodge feature enabled. Global vision feature enabled. Auto target feature enabled. As lines of small text floated in front of Yoji Longbai, his cross-star eyes clearly reflected the image of this mythical killing formation. The corners of his mouth curved upward slightly. It seems this restriction isn't as strong as I thought." Sea God Mountain. Lin Chia had 2 long sabers at his waist and held a trident in one hand as he slowly walked toward the mountain peak. Fine sea water fell from the sky like raindrops, soaking his deep red cloak, but Lin Chia remained oblivious. His wet hair tips hung down to his brows, and his eyes were as deathly still as a volcano before eruption. When he stepped onto the final stone step, a tall figure sitting on a golden throne slowly opened his eyes. "So it's your true form. I thought you would send the burning angel to fight me." Poseidon sensed Lin Chia's human-level ceiling aura fluctuations with some surprise, then nodded. "That makes sense. After using the power of a chief god to cut through the restrictions and mountains, then breaking the golden birdcage, that body's power must be depleted by now? Do you really think you can defeat me in the mythical killing formation with a body that hasn't even entered the divine realm? How full dash?" Before Poseidon could finish his last word, a flash of blade light erupted from Lin Chia's hand. Poseidon hadn't expected Lin Chia to strike so quickly. His figure suddenly darted to the side, but the blade light seemed to ignore space itself, directly grazing past his ear and cutting a line of blood across his cheek. Only then did a crisp blade ring sound by his ear. Unsheathed. Lin Chia had no intention of exchanging words with Poseidon. The blade light flashed repeatedly in his hand, piercing through Poseidon's afterimages one after another before disappearing into nothingness. After avoiding several blade strikes, Poseidon finally stabilized his form. He wiped his cheek with his palm, saw the crimson blood, and his face turned extremely grim. The wound from this cut wasn't deep. After all, wasn't a divine weapon, and the damage it could inflict on him was very limited. But this unexpected attack made him extremely angry, and he spoke through gritted teeth. "Fine. Since you're seeking death, I'll grant your wish." Poseidon let out a low roar, and a massive restriction opened at the peak of the divine mountain. Lin Chia felt the scenery around him changing rapidly, and after the starlight flickered, the divine mountain had completely disappeared. Lin Chia looked down to see a strange crimson ocean churning beneath his feet. The sky above was stirring like ink, extending all the way to the edge of the crimson ocean. At this moment the world seemed to consist of only black and red. Lin Chia frowned slightly. Between these black and red colors, Poseidon's tall figure appeared like a giant, suspended upside down in the ink-like stirring sky, his feet treading on the ink-like sky as if walking on another sea. Lin Chia's gaze swept between the black and red, and for a moment he couldn't tell which was the real sea. Or perhaps both were. In this duel we'll see, even that old Zeus would be trapped by me for a while. The crimson we'll see beneath your feet will be your burial ground today. Poseidon snorted coldly. As Poseidon's words fell, the crimson we'll see beneath Lin Chia's feet began to tremble. Lin Chia's eyes narrowed and a sense of crisis washed over him. His figure transformed into an afterimage as he rushed to the side. Boom! A giant shadow erupted from the bottom of the crimson we'll see, directly engulfing the area of sea where Lin Chia had been. It was a massive beast formed from crimson seawater. Just the radius of its mouth was an exaggerated hundreds of kilometers, and if counting the part below the crimson sea surface, its total size was at least equivalent to an entire Kunlun mountain range. After swallowing the entire area of sea along with Lin Chia's figure, the beast's form visibly began to shrink. In just a few seconds, its volume had decreased by a third. Then the part above the sea surface twisted slightly like a sea fish and plunged into the crimson we'll see. But before its body could completely submerge, a blade ring echoed through the sky. A beam of black and gold light swept across heaven and earth, and a deep red figure flew out. The shattered body of the giant beast turned into crimson rain, scattering and falling onto the sea surface. Lin Chia's figure landed back on the crimson sea, his brows tightly knit. That big fish that jumped out of the crimson we'll see didn't seem to have much offensive power. Even though it had swallowed him whole just now, it had barely caused any damage, but he felt something wasn't quite right. Lin Chia glanced at the pitch-black sea hanging upside down in the sky and suddenly froze. Poseidon seemed a bit larger than before. Just as Lin Chia was pondering this, the sea beneath his feet surged again. This time Lin Chia was prepared. Left its sheath at his waist and his figure entered the void, moving across the sea surface. A crimson fish the size of a mountain range jumped out of the seawater, swallowing the area where he had been, then visibly shrinking before plunging back into the sea bottom. At the same time, a black sea fish jumped out of the inverted ink we'll see, swallowing Poseidon who stood on the sea surface. This sea fish was much smaller, incomparable to the crimson fish that had just swallowed Lin Chia, but after swallowing Poseidon, its size expanded rapidly. In just a few seconds the black sea fish's size tripled. It opened its mouth and spat Poseidon out, whose form was now 3 times larger than before. Seeing this, Lin Chia's expression changed slightly. He roughly understood the principle of this mythical restriction. The crimson we'll see and the ink we'll see each had 2 different kinds of fish. The fish in the crimson we'll see would shrink along with whatever life form it swallowed, while the fish in the ink we'll see would expand along with whatever life form it swallowed. As one side continuously shrank and the other continuously expanded, the gap between them would grow exponentially. If Poseidon standing before Lin Chia was merely tall before, now he had completely transformed into a giant, like a mountain before Lin Chia. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before he became like the Monkey King in Buddha's palm. Lin Chia gripped, hiding in the void to avoid the crimson fish's bites. His figure shot straight up into the clouds, and when he reappeared he was already in front of the giant Poseidon. Poseidon looked down at Lin Chia, who wasn't even as big as one of his fingers, with derision in his eyes. His enormous hand pressed down like a falling sky, smashing toward Lin Chia's face. Lin Chia held his dual sabers, and strands of cause and effect threads floated out from beneath his deep red cloak, drilling into the wound on Poseidon's cheek. Poseidon's body suddenly shuddered. A segment of cause and effect that had never existed was created out of thin air. In a daze he returned to that rainy night thousands of years ago. Back then, Olympus had just obtained its origin and he, Poseidon, was still just a minor god without much faith. But for some unknown reason he had offended a terrifying human powerhouse. That human wielded dual sabers and wore a deep red cloak, chasing and hunting him for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, killing until the entire sea area was dyed blood red. During that time, whenever he saw that demonic face, he instinctively felt fear. That day, he was finally unable to escape from those hunting him. That demon-like human cut off his 4 limbs with a knife, dragged his body to the top of a mountain, and nailed him to a metal divine frame. The human cut open all his blood vessels, letting his divine blood flow from the mountaintop, ignoring all his pleas and begging, without any intention of sparing him, looking at him with endless coldness in their eyes. He would never forget the despair of that day, never forget the emptiness and helplessness as his blood was drained drop by drop. When his blood had dyed the mountain peak red at the brink of death, the humans spared him. Killing you this time would be too merciful. In the future I will come find you periodically, and each time I find you I will drain all your blood. From now on, you will live forever in fear of me. Remember, Poseidon, before me, you are nothing. Within the dual we'll see, it's you. It's you. Poseidon's pupils suddenly contracted. This brief pause allowed Lin Chia to seize the opportunity, his figure turning into a blur as he avoided Poseidon's palm. The blade light of divine calamity flashed repeatedly, carving a crimson X mark on the giant's enormous chest. Previously, this slash could have cut off half his body, but now the size difference between Poseidon and Lin Chia was too great, so this cut could only barely cover the area of his chest. The sea god's law was partially dispersed by divine calamity, and Poseidon's aura rapidly weakened. The pain from this cut also awakened Poseidon, who glared at Lin Chia and roared. No, none of that ever happened. What did you put in my mind? Lin Chia could use causeless cause to forcibly establish a non-existent causal relationship with others, but this ability required an original causal connection as a medium. If the original causal relationship wasn't strong enough, he could only create causality by inflicting wounds. Therefore, the more severe the injury Lin Chia caused, the stronger and more stable the established causality would be. Just now, White Slash had merely grazed Poseidon, creating a wound too shallow, resulting in a somewhat unstable causality that Poseidon became aware of. But the next cut would not be so easy to bear. Fresh blood gushed from the X-shaped wound on the giant Poseidon's chest, and dense causal threads connected with Lin Chia. Poseidon seemed to sense something, roared in anger, and 2 sea fish, one red and one black, leaped out simultaneously. The black fish swallowed Poseidon's form in one gulp, its size expanding rapidly with the wind, while Lin Chia relied on White Slash to enter the void, avoiding another attack. Lin Chia tried to pursue the black fish that had swallowed Poseidon, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach the inverted ink we'll see above, as if it existed in a completely different world from the red we'll see beneath his feet. Looking at the all-encompassing black fish form above, Lin Chia's expression grew solemn. At this rate, if he couldn't kill Poseidon quickly or break the restriction, Poseidon would grow larger and larger, making him increasingly difficult to kill, while Lin Chia himself would have to constantly dodge the attacks of the red fish. Should he use those things? Lin Chia looked up at the void above, but after a moment shook his head. No, it's not time yet, he murmured. The black fish fell back into the ink we'll see, and Poseidon slowly rose from the surface. He hung inverted in the sky, his head alone as large as the Olympian mountains. Now he was like a human-shaped divine realm floating in the upper atmosphere, coldly looking down at Lin Chia on the sea surface. Boom boom boom. A deep rumbling came from the sky and the daylight suddenly dimmed. A colossal fist emerged from the inkwell sea, the air being compressed and rubbed by the giant fist, quickly igniting a layer of intense flames on its surface, like a comet falling from the heavens. But judging from the coverage area of this punch, Lin Chia had no possibility of avoiding it. If this punch were to hit the real world, it could probably sink half of Japan into the sea. The scorching wind made the red wheel sea surge with turbulent waves. Lin Chia looked up at the falling giant fist, skillfully loosened all his joints, producing crisp cracking sounds. 4 years. Finally have a chance to use that ability. I wonder how effective it will actually be. Lin Chia gently twisted the wrist holding white slash. The snow-white blade traced an arc in front of him, and as a purple light flashed, the blade dissolved into countless points of light, merging into Lin Chia's body. At this moment, Lin Chia's aura suddenly became sharp. His form flickered between reality and void, countless red fish leaped from the sea surface, but none could touch even the hem of his clothes. He seemed to have transcended space itself, standing there yet seemingly present everywhere in this sea region. Hand of Royal Authority. Forcibly requisition the abilities and properties of any item, transferring them to the user. The item must recognize the user as its master, and only one item can be transferred at a time. Duration, 1 minute. This was the last ability Lin Chia had drawn from Gilgamesh 4 years ago. Back then, just as Gilgamesh was discharged from the hospital, chaos took away the divine mental hospital, and Lin Chia's chance to extract abilities was left behind in the hospital. It wasn't until after that great battle, when Lin Chia reclaimed the hospital, that he performed the final extraction. Since the hospital was already within Lin Chia's true body at that time, Hand of Royal Authority became the only forbidden domain in this body besides causeless cause. The meteor-like giant fist crashed down from the sky, its fiery glow turning the entire sky red. Lin Chia gripped Divine Calamity with one hand, his form flashing with a white light, and instantly disappeared. Having merged with white slash, Lin Chia gained its 2 major properties of ignoring space and entering the void. In this brief minute, space had no meaning to him. Lin Chia crossed hundreds of kilometers of void in the blink of an eye, easily passing the burning giant fist, and arrived on Poseidon's arm, which was like a suspended mountain. A blade light penetrated the flesh beneath his feet, cutting frantically. The black gold blade light flashed, and with that deep red figure sweeping wildly, a blood-colored wound 4 to 5 kilometers long was carved out in just seconds. Poseidon's roar resonated like thunder, and his other sky-covering hand slammed down on the arm where Lin Chia stood. The shockwave made both seas churn violently. But with a flash of spatial white light, the deep red figure had already vanished, and in the next moment, a blade light suddenly pierced the giant Poseidon's brow. Feeling a sharp pain, Poseidon finally noticed a deep red figure that had somehow appeared above his head. Fortunately, his body was already massive enough that although the blade pierced his skull, it didn't reach any vital areas. Poseidon struck out repeatedly, trying to grab Lin Chia, but no matter how wide his attacks were, they were completely ineffective against someone with the ability to ignore space. Between the black and red oceans, a figure wielding a long blade moved like a ghost, constantly drifting around the giant's body. The deep red cloak danced wildly in the wind, the sharp blade flashing brilliantly. In just a few dozen seconds, over 100 bloody marks appeared on the giant Poseidon's body. Though none were fatal individually, from a distance, the giant had turned crimson. Dense threads of cause and effect extended from beneath Lin Chia's cloak, penetrating into Poseidon's wounds. In the reflection of Lin Chia's eyes, these threads had woven into a giant cocoon, slowly enveloping the giant Poseidon. The corner of his mouth curved slightly upward. Poseidon remembered. Thousands of years ago, after the first time he was hunted and bled by that human, barely 10 years passed before he encountered that deep red figure again. It was a night of rolling dark clouds, and that figure, still wielding dual blades, walked step by step through the entrance of his temple, treading through blood. The moment he saw that familiar face, he was terrified. He screamed frantically, trying to call the other Olympian gods for help, but no matter how loudly he shouted, the gods seemed to have vanished and not a single one responded. "Poseidon, I've come." the deep red figure said calmly. I told you I would return for you. He tried to resist but was still cut down by the deep red figure with a single slash. The stranger's power filled him with unparalleled despair. He lay on the ground, kicking his legs as he retreated toward the corner of the temple, begging the deep red figure for mercy while backing away, but the latter seemed not to hear, pinning him to the wall with a blade. Just like 10 years before, the deep red figure cut open his flesh, letting divine blood fill the entire temple, flowing down the ancient stone steps of the mountain. Amid constant pleas, Poseidon gradually lost consciousness. As he approached death, the deep red figure spared him again, coldly saying, From now on I will come for you once every 10 years. After that he disappeared. Poseidon began having nightmares night after night. When the 10-year appointment approached again, he found Zeus, who had already become the supreme god, and begged for his protection. Zeus readily agreed and told him to stay by his side at all times. But when the deep red figure appeared again, Zeus seemed to vanish into thin air, nowhere to be found. In despair, Poseidon once again experienced Ling-Chi torture. Later he tried countless methods, going to different divine realms, hiding in different places, but no matter what, the deep red figure could always find him precisely, drain his blood and torture him to the brink of death. By the 7th time, Poseidon finally couldn't take it anymore. Pinned to a boulder by the long blade, he desperately begged the deep red figure. Kill me, just kill me. I will kill you, but not now, the figure said calmly. 8,000 years from now, when the sky turns blood red, that will be your time to die. Don't try to kill yourself or I will appear before you. 1,000 years meant he would suffer torture 100 more times. Unable to accept this reality, the day after he recovered from near death, he secretly tried to commit suicide with a divine weapon. But before the weapon could touch him, the deep red figure appeared out of nowhere, cut him down with one slash, and subjected him to another round of Ling-Chi bloodletting. He was utterly desperate. That deep red figure was like an inescapable nightmare in Poseidon's fate. His life, his everything, was merely a plaything to the other. During the subsequent 1,000 years, Poseidon became increasingly numb, even adapting to the torture every 10 years. He gave up all resistance because he knew that against that person resistance had no meaning. Throughout this millennium, his dreams contained only the deep red figure wielding dual blades, slowly approaching, and that nightmarish, repeatedly echoing calm voice. Poseidon, I've come. Poseidon, I've come. Poseidon, I've come. Dual will see. Beams of light floated out from Lin Chia's body, reassembling into the blade of John Bai, which he gripped in his hand. He looked up at the giant Poseidon in midair, tightly controlled by the threads of cause and effect. In Poseidon's eyes, there was no longer any of the original sharpness, only endless blankness and numbness. Wearing his deep red cloak and holding dual blades, he slowly spoke. Hing. I've come. Hearing this demonic whisper, a flash of instinctive terror appeared in Poseidon's blank expression. The next moment, this mythical forbidden technique, dual will see, gradually shattered and dissipated. The red and black oceans transformed into starlight and faded away, and Poseidon's enormous form gradually shrank back to normal. Poseidon instinctively cancelled this mythical forbidden technique, a painful reflex developed over the millennium of torture. The environment twisted, and the two returned to the peak of the divine mountain facing each other. The storm howled across the peak of the sea god's mountain, wailing. After a brief pause, Lin Chia stepped toward Poseidon. Covered in wounds, Poseidon hung his head, not daring to look at Lin Chia. He stood silently in place, his eyes hollow like a lamb awaiting slaughter. Lin Chia stopped in front of him, raised God's calamity, and placed the black gold blade tip against Poseidon's chest, gradually applying force to pierce it. Crimson blood flowed along the blade and Poseidon's face visibly paled, but he still kept his head down, not making a sound. In this eerie silence, Poseidon's body was slowly pierced through by God's calamity, the power of laws continuously dissipating under its effect. He let out a painful groan, blood dripping along the blade onto the ground, pooling and gradually spreading down the divine mountain. Kneel, Lin Chia said calmly. Without any hesitation, Poseidon fell to his knees with a thud like a numb machine. Do you see it? The sky is blood red. Lin Chia spoke slowly. Above the Olympian mountains a dark red times mark had already dyed the sky crimson. Hearing these words, Poseidon's body trembled slightly. He looked up at the sky, his entire body shaking, from fear or perhaps excitement. Finally, he rasped, relief appearing in his eyes. Lin Chia looked down at Poseidon kneeling before him and spoke as if granting a favor or giving an order. Poseidon, the new king of Olympus, god of the sea. Today I permit you to die. Mount Dionysus. Damn it. Damn it. Can someone tell me, why won't you die? Huh? You human. How can you be tougher than me? The illusory intoxicated faces danced at the peak of the divine mountain, with Dionysus's frantic voice echoing through the clouds. At the center of the mythical barrier, Hu Jia sat cross-legged wearing a black cloak. The melodious sound of the Sun flute floated in the air, while countless intoxicated faces attacked continuously, yet failed to harm him in the slightest. Monster. You humans are all monsters. That guy with the gray wings is a monster. The one who broke the barrier with a single sword is a monster. You're a monster too. I can't defeat you in the mental world and I can't do anything about you in the real world. Fine, so you brought so many people? You're cheating, aren't you? Cheating. Enough. Stop invading my mental world. Really enough. Damn it. What strange things have you sewn into my mental world? What's this? I'll send you 50? What the hell is Crazy Thursday? It was Poseidon who decided to go against Asya, and it was Poseidon who took your people. Whatever grudge you have, go find him. Stop sewing. Beg you. I don't want to become a madman. Goose, 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 curved neck singing to the sky, white feathers floating on green water, green mountains and clear waters are mountains of gold and silver. The mountain road here winds 18 times. As the melodious Sun sound echoed, more and more intoxicated illusions fell into madness. Dionysus in midair clutched his head with both hands, sometimes muttering in pain, sometimes singing loudly, the clarity in his eyes becoming increasingly fragmented. Hu Jia stopped playing the stone Sun and slowly stood up. Master Lin said that today the divine mountain would be dyed with blood. I'm sorry. Hu Jia drew the straight knife from his waist and suddenly slashed at the completely insane Dionysus. Crimson blood gushed out. Mount Hades. Raging flames rose from within the temple. With a muffled rumble, the last wall completely collapsed. The gray intent that enveloped heaven and earth receded like a tide. Shin Qingzhu put away the wings on his back and stood amidst the flames, one hand already gripping Hades' throat. Didn't you just say, you would cut off your head and give it to me? Shin Qingzhu said calmly. Can you do it yourself? If not, do you need my help? Hades opened his eyes in anger and spoke grimly. Human, don't be so arrogant. If you didn't have the hell origin, how could you possibly break my underworld barrier? Shin Qingzhu possessed the hell origin, which in a sense made him the lord of hell, while Hades was at most the king of the underworld of Olympus. The two were not on the same level in terms of laws, and naturally barriers related to the underworld could not trap the angel of stillness. So, will you do it yourself or shall I help you? Shin Qingzhu repeated as if he hadn't heard Hades' words. Even if you manage to defeat me by luck, the others will certainly die. Even if you kill me now, you still won't be able to leave Olymp. Hades didn't finish the last two syllables as his peripheral vision caught something in the distance, leaving him suddenly stunned. In the distance, on the Sea God Mountain and Wine God Mountain, the corresponding stars had shattered and dispersed. Crimson blood flowed down from the peaks like dye, staining the mountains red. How is this possible? Hades' pupils contracted slightly as he sensed the dissipation of two laws. Poseidon and Dionysus were dead. They each presided over a mythical killing formation, yet they couldn't win against a single human in one-on-one combat? Although he was in the same situation. But the man before him who possessed the hell origin was special. How could those other humans possibly win? It seems you don't intend to do it yourself. Shin Qingzhu's voice sounded leisurely. Before Hades could say anything more, a cold flash cut across his neck and a terrified head flew high. Blood gushed from Hades' body. Shin Qingzhu calmly took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it with a gentle stroke in the burning temple, and the sea of fire in the ruins instantly extinguished. He lowered his head and took a light puff, exhaling a hazy cloud of smoke, then walked down the mountain, treading through pools of blood. Mount Apollo. Is that all? Yuzhu Lingbai stood in the center of the 9 stone pillars, which were now in ruins, asking with waning interest. The sun god Apollo, riding his chariot, looked down at the white-haired youth who still had 4/5 of his health bar left, his expression as unpleasant as if he had eaten dirt. That's not right. Even if I broke this barrier, you should have other skills, right? Yuzhu Lingbai asked in confusion. Why aren't you using your sun god's thought? Are you saving it as a final move? I think there's a problem with your skill configuration. If you had used the control type Flame Lock at the beginning combined with Sun God's Thought, you could have dealt a good amount of AoE damage in the first wave. If you had then seized the opportunity to deploy this barrier when I was low on health after the first wave, that would have been the optimal solution. Also, your attribute allocation isn't quite right. You focus too much on spell damage but don't have many hard controls. At the very least, you could learn more skills that automatically target enemies. Or you could add more to your defense so you wouldn't be left with just a sliver of health after my attacks. Although Apollo listened with complete bewilderment, he somehow sensed a strong mockery in these words. Yet strangely, Yuzhu Lingbai's expression while speaking was very serious, as if he genuinely wanted to help improve Apollo's strength. Yuzhu Lingbai sighed somewhat helplessly, seemingly feeling sorry for Apollo. Just then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed the surrounding mountains stained red with blood, and suddenly came back to his senses. Oh no, I was so caught up discussing mechanics with this player who misallocated his skill points that I forgot I needed to finish him quickly. Yuzhu Lingbai's expression immediately turned serious. I'm sorry, but with your current strength, you have no way to defeat me. Allocate your skill points correctly in your next life, then come challenge me again. Yuzhu Lingbai reached into the void and drew a massive beheading blade into his hand. Then a panel appeared before his eyes. Unknown plugin installation. Plugin installation complete. Please select the weapon attributes you wish to modify. Attack power plus 99,999. Armor penetration plus 99,999. Bleeding plus 99,999. As massive amounts of information scrolled across the beheading blades panel, Yuzhu Lingbai nodded with satisfaction. He weighed the handle, his form transforming into a blur, instantly flashing to Apollo's front. A flash of blood erupted. As the last bit of Apollo's health bar emptied, his broken body flew backward. Player Apollo challenge failed. Yuzhu Lingbai looked at the blood-stained ground before him and waved his hand to put away the beheading blade. That should do it. Just as Yuzhu Lingbai was about to turn and leave, his footsteps suddenly halted mid-air. He turned his head in confusion and saw a doorway standing in the pool of blood. The shape of the doorway kept changing, clearly a passage between the real world and the game world. Yuzhu Lingbai seemed to hear something inside helplessly. I know. I'll let you out right now. He walked to the doorway, turned the handle, and with a soft click the door slowly opened. A young girl stepped across the threshold, walking out from the game world. She took a deep breath. It's been so long since I breathed real air. Being human is much more comfortable. AI Mimi couldn't help but remark. Why did you come out now? I'm here to help you. Help me. Yuzhu Lingbai glanced at Apollo's scattered remains in the pool of blood. But I've already dealt with him. Not him. There's something else here. AI Mimi spoke with certainty. Her nose sniffed the air, quickly finding a direction, and she walked briskly toward it. Although Yuzhu Lingbai was full of doubts, he still followed behind her. AI Mimi descended from the peak of Yangshan Mountain, passed through several messy paths and arrived at a hidden cave. This is it. What's inside? Yuzhu Lingbai asked. Sorrow, pain, and despair. AI Mimi spoke softly, stepping inside. Yuzhu Lingbai followed behind her, walking downward for about a minute. The originally narrow underground passage suddenly opened up. A vast cavern appeared before the two. This cavern was at the base of the mountain, seemingly artificially hollowed out, connected to the bases of several other peaks. Looking around, there were countless dark passages, dark and damp. Even at its highest point, the ceiling was not taller than Yuzhu Lingbai, forcing him to stoop as he walked. At this moment, in this dim cavern, pairs of numb and bewildered eyes were looking at them. This cavern was full of people everywhere. This Yuji Longbai's gaze swept over these skeletal hunched figures, his pupils slightly contracting. Olympus's human circle? Yuji Longbai himself came from a human circle, so he naturally knew what this place was. But the human circle cavern before him was vastly inferior to Takamagara's human circle in countless ways. The environment was cramped and harsh, and the population barely exceeded 10,000. Compared to Takamagara's human circle, this place was nothing more than a dark underground pigsty. Their emotions are so depressing, just smelling it makes me feel suffocated. AI Mimi spoke with furrowed brows. We need to rescue them. Yuji Longbai turned to AI Mimi. You must have a way, right? Don't worry. I have a plan that kills two birds with one stone. AI Mimi smiled slightly. However, I need your help. At the foot of the Divine Mountain, a carriage sped through the chaotic battlefield. All four divine mountains are blood-stained. It seems all the main gods of Olympus have been dealt with. Chin Han rode a ghost horse beside the carriage, his straight blade soaked in fresh blood. Hang in there a bit longer. Lin Chia and the others should be back soon. Master Chen nodded. At the edge of the battlefield, Guanzai, Wu Quan and Xiaopinga joined forces to suppress the attacks of 5 or 6 lesser gods. But their offensive was gradually weakening, showing signs of losing control. Facing numerous lesser gods, these human powerhouses working together could barely suppress them. But the problem was that none of them possessed laws, so they couldn't cause true casualties. As the battle dragged on, the lesser gods hadn't decreased in number, but the humans' spiritual energy was nearly exhausted. These humans are almost done. Attack together. A voice rose among the lesser gods, and their attacks became even more fierce, surrounding the 5 powerhouses like madmen. Just then a panel appeared above all their heads. Game loading progress. 0%, 19%, 40%, 76%, 100%. Welcome to the nightmare-level game developed by GZ. Game name, Cute Idol Girl's Kiss crossed out. Game name, Destroy Olympus. Long live Great Xia. Skill 2 verification in progress. Verification successful. Seeing the last line of text, the lesser gods of Olympus were filled with confusion. What is this? A game? Destroy Olympus? And what is skill 2? Before they could react, beams of black light instantly engulfed their forms, and all the lesser gods simultaneously disappeared. What's going on? Where did they go? Xiaopinga, who had been ready for a bloody battle with his blade, asked in confusion. Guanzai looked at the panel floating in the air, his mouth twitching slightly. We don't need to fight anymore. They're doomed. AI Mimi. AI Mimi. AI Mimi. Wave-like voices came from the crowd. Countless thin, hunched humans crawled out of the cavern. They stood on the open ground, bathing in the sunlight. Their eyes no longer showed the despair and numbness from before, but were filled with hopeful light. They gathered together, looking at the girl standing on a huge rock, cheering loudly. How did you do that? They should be seeing you for the first time, right? Yuji Longbai watched the scene before him and spoke in astonishment. AI Mimi smiled and said, Don't underestimate the power of emotions and don't underestimate me. She stood straight on the rock, winked her right eye at the crowd below and shouted in a spirited voice. Everyone, don't be afraid. Great Xia has already slaughtered those Olympian gods. From now on, you'll never have to live in fear in the caverns again. To commemorate our meeting in the sunlight, let's take a group photo. AI Mimi extended her thumbs and index fingers, framing all the human circle residents as if holding a camera, and spoke with a smile. 3, 2, 1. As her words fell, dozens of black beams appeared in the distance. The lesser gods looked around in confusion, having no idea what was happening. Cheers rose and fell in the distance, and a young girl stood on a huge rock, slightly tilting her head, winking at one of the lesser gods. That lesser god felt his mind shake, suddenly spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, his face as pale as paper. Are those the people from underground? How did they escape? And who is that girl? Just as the gods were speaking in confusion, a deep red figure descended from the sky. Lin Chia held the torch-like Olympian source in one hand, slowly rising from the shattered ground. In his other hand he held a blood-stained head.